This is Rob Fnuff from the Counter Charge Podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games. You're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend Clem.
Hello, everybody.
Yay! We're doing it, Clem. Episode 7.
Already? Wow.
Yeah, slowly but surely, I'm starting to feel a lot less like we're going to hear this played back to us in a court of law, you know? I'm starting to get slightly more comfortable recording ourselves rambling on about Mantic models.
And you think that's a success? I kind of classify this as a failure. We should escalate things a little bit.
Absolutely. So, yeah, welcome with us, dear listeners. So, what do we have on the menu for today, Clem? So, we have... we'll give our introduction. We'll go into Mantic news. The exciting news this week is we're going to be talking about Mantic's new Big Red Book, which is sure to be released soon. So that's very exciting. We're then doing our usual talking about our Warpath Firefight, our Warpath Deadzone. We'll then talk about Pannithor, any Kings of War stuff, all that good stuff. We're going to talk about our Salamanders project we've got going on. We're going to talk about Pannilore, which is us just rambling on about Mantic lore. We're going to go into listener questions. Our topic of the month today is how to manage your collections, or not, spoiler alert. And then we'll wrap up the show, talk about next month a little bit, and go to conclusions. There we go, Clem, another full episode as always.
Yeah, it's super exciting to get this big red book for Kings of War for this year and share our impressions and hopefully give you guys... like interesting tidbits about the upcoming book. And yeah, good episode. Looking forward to it.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Oh, and Clem, before I forget, we had some feedback from the charming Steve Hildrew, who basically said, sheesh, 3 hours, who has time to listen to a podcast like this? But actually, I love listening to massive long podcasts, so I'm hoping some other people do as well.
I mean, it's like getting a 3 kg cake. No one says you have to eat all of it in one go, but if you're super hungry, at least you have 3 kgs of cake. And if you
don't, you've got more to eat tomorrow, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's how I see it. It's true though that I'm thankful that the hosting platform doesn't allow us that much more than 3 hours. Otherwise, we would do 5, 6, 7 hours, wouldn't we?
We'll just take a quick nap. You know, still recording the podcast. You know, just sleeping in our chairs, and then we're back. Yes, like quite possibly. So, Clem, let's move on to Mantic news. So, first things first, Mantic have just announced they're doing 2 boxes of D&D models. There's, I think, a wizard and a necromancer one. And I just thought I'd mention that because that's a thing. That's a thing that's happened this month.
Yeah, that's the latest news. You have short-term memory. That's good. It's that's what happens when you're still in your late 30s.
I've got another couple of days of still being in my late 30s. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, I wanted to mention it. I had to. Anyway, yeah, those boxes are pretty cool. I think it's an interesting, how you call it, like opening up a little bit to other customers. I think the most interesting aspect for me from those boxes is they explicitly say there are D&D rules for the stuff in there. I was like, okay, so Mantic is now doing D&D stuff. I didn't know that. But I think it's actually pretty smart because when you think about, okay, who might start buying miniatures? Well, anyone playing D&D with 0 miniatures yet is a pretty good candidate. And
Plus
so,
board gamers, and they've already kind of addressed that, right?
yeah, and so
With the board game division.
yeah, I think that's a smart move. I don't think I will get those boxes myself, but I like what they're doing there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, me too, buddy. Yeah, I think it is interesting. It's a little throwaway comment, but in terms of just looking at what Mantic's doing with the business.
Yeah, as we discussed it. Yeah, absolutely. As we discussed before, I think that's a vital thing for them to do. It's also good for us, like their existing customers, that bring in more people into the hobby. Like doing demos is one thing, but also opening up to potentially new audiences, luring them in, I think is very important. And I'm glad they're doing this. Let's just say that.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's kind of luring fresh people in. It's not just trying to lure GW people or
absolutely.
Infinity people.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
whatever.
I mean, they still do that as well, right? Like they've made jokes about our dwarves are available, whatever. After from what I understand, the shitty rules, even by their standards of the what are the names? The leagues of whatever.
League of Voltan.
Yeah,
I hear there was a league, a tournament in Germany for 40k, and they've already banned them because they've said they're OP.
Yeah.
You're not playing them.
It's interesting. I've heard stories about they changed a bit how they review the rules, and like they didn't renew contracts for demo testers or play testers and stuff like that. I don't know, whatever. It's just they are still
Clem, importantly, they don't have any Brockers.
Right. That's for a Brocker fan like you. It's a big. It's a deal.
It's a hard pass.
It's a deal breaker.
Why even bother? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, what other news did we get from Mantic? I think a couple of weeks ago or something like this, we had a series of articles about like quite a few things about Kings of War. Like they gave us a roadmap till the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really exciting and it's really useful information that we're not always privy to. I think it's really smart to tell us. So when it comes to kind of like planning our hobby for the next 12 months, we can kind of do that, or the next 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So I really like that because it lets you plan ahead and think, well, actually, do I want to do, let's say, an Empire of Dust army? That's the new one. What else is coming down the pipeline?
Yes.
And what's coming makes a lot of sense, right? It's, building out existing ranges.
Yep, absolutely.
With cool models. Yeah. Hot plastic ogres we knew were coming out. We've seen the sprues, they look cool, and it seems like they've got the various different weapon options, right? So you could build boomers, you could build two-handed weapons, shield, you could do the warriors.
Yeah.
So that's, Clem, that's cool, right?
I mean, I completely agree with you. Having kind of an idea of, okay, what's on the menu for the next 3 months at any given time is interesting because kind of keeps you engaged with what's coming up in the pipeline. Also have sort of an idea, okay, for the next 12 months, or like the Twilight King is the next army that will get a big redo and so on. I think that's really an interesting info to have, and it's a good way to manage their customer and fan base, I think, and so I'm happy with that. I hope
particularly given the fact that that army list is not in the big red book. Spoiler alert.
Right. So that's sure. That's part of like they probably had to tell something about that, right? Like, oops, we forgot to put them in the book. Not, but yeah, I don't know. I think I like the way they communicate. I think it's open and in a way it's genuine as well. It's just I don't know. I like it. So yeah, what other news did they give us? Like in the roadmap and stuff. There's mentions of an app, right?
I'll just quickly mention. So we've got models to come. We know that there's going to be a Salamanders slasher model, Clan Lord and Fire Drake. We've got the Orc Chariot models coming, and interestingly, the EOD Sandborn Worm Riders, which sounds really cool. But yeah, sorry, Clem, go back to the app. Yeah.
We don't know that much about it, right? It's supposedly a companion app. I think I've heard Brony mention maybe that it would also be useful for tournaments.
Planning
right?
and building. I've heard him. Yeah, I think I saw the same video as you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested. Let's say it like that. I hope they never switch to app only stuff because these things die out and then you can't use it, like once they stop supporting it. But if it's a companion that you don't have to use, I think it's really interesting. I hope it's done professionally enough that it can be used. Right? Like it's not just a super frustrating UI or something like this. But yeah, let's say I'm neutral positive on this and waiting to see what they manage to do with it.
It sounds ambitious, Clem. It makes me a little bit nervous how ambitious it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, if they truly believe that adds some value, maybe they invested some money in this and outsourced development or something cool for this. Who knows? I mean, they can do it in a smart way that isn't too expensive. So, yeah, let's see. And it's big for the end of the year, so there's not that much to wait until we know a bit more what's going to come up from this.
And Clem, how do we think this is going to impact Easy Army, Mantic Easy Army? Do we think the two will run side by side?
I think so. I think isn't that what it said that it will not replace Easy Army? At least that's what I heard. If they plan to replace Easy Army, well then fine, I guess. It's a bit too bad because I bought my all-in year subscription that renewed not long ago. But, then if they want to replace it, it kind of puts a bit more pressure on the app to really, really work, right? Like, it's quite important to have a list building tool that really just is flawless. And for me, having Easy Army is a big part of why I like Mantic games. Like, in particular for Kings of War, the fact that any army that you create there with Easy Army, you get like 2 pages and you get everything just there. I just love it. I think it makes a massive, massive difference to other games or even to Battle Scribe, right? Like for all of the other game systems that I play, or even for Kings of War, when you make a list with Battle Scribe and you generate the outputs, then you get 9 pages. It's like, great, thank you.
And
my printer loves you.
Horribly presented and ugly and confusing. It's just not as clean and clear as Easy Army.
I mean, it is, I think, extremely important to not screw that up. And so if they really want to replace Easy Army with the app, then I sure hope they did their homework on making it super nice to use and really work for when you're playing your game and so on. But let's see.
I wonder if, because all I know about the guy who makes Mantic Easy Army is he's called Greg. That's literally all I know.
Right.
But, I mean, possibly just speculating wildly, I have absolutely zero insider knowledge, as ever. But, who knows? Maybe they hired Greg to create the new app. Who knows?
Maybe. I mean, it's slightly different to do Easy Army and to do an app. To some extent, some things are a bit similar, but maybe, who knows?
Who knows?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Greg is. I'm not sure that's a guy who's doing that full time because there's not that much work. I would say, like, it's definitely something I would see someone do on their free time.
Yeah.
And he also supports other game systems and Mantic stuff. So, who knows? Interesting questions. But of all the new stuff coming up, is there anything that you plan to get your hands onto, or like which model are you getting out of all of this?
So I guess we're going to get onto it when we talk about the big group. Or maybe we talk about it now. I will be getting a Twilight Kin army, a Mantic Twilight Kin army when it comes out.
So I think me too. But I meant more in the short-term stuff. Like, is there anything that's
So, actually, one thing we haven't mentioned was what I'm calling Stormgate, right? So... so we've seen teased the new Storm Giant for the Riftforge Orcs. I've been super positive about it, going, I'm definitely going to get one when it's released.
Right.
Then it came up for pre-order, Clem, and it came up at €80.
Right.
And the very first thing I did was message you and go, what? €80?
Yeah.
And then you were smart enough to basically say, hey, I'm actually going to ask the question.
Yeah, because, wait. I mean, just as a reference point, the basically Night Stalker very similar kit is 55, right? So it's not just 80 euros. Ooh, that's a lot of money. It's also, wait a second, a very similar model, like the same giant plastic base plus resin add-ons to customize it to a specific faction, was 55 euros a few months ago, and now the next one is 80. Like, that must be a mistake, right? Like,
and you make a great point, Clem, right? Rather than me just going, oh, that's too expensive, you're actually, thinking about this logically and comparing it to something that actually exists. But let's be honest, Clem, most of the kit is the same. It's the same PVC legs and body.
right.
You've got, I think a slightly different torso. Definitely the arms and head are different. But 80 euros, my goodness. And you got a response almost immediately back from somebody at Mantic saying, oh yeah, really sorry, that was a mistake, you're right. And they've put the price down.
Yeah, on the Mantic website. I don't know for distributors if it's... let me double check right now if it was updated. Because the stuff that was on pre-order wasn't... Storm Giant... on my usual store. Do I find it someplace? Oh, I need to type it differently. I don't know, because of course the Mantic website they updated right away, but nope, fantasywelt.de, not sponsored or anything. That's just my usual when I want something quickly that is not on stock on my local store. That's where I go. They still expect it end of October for 80 euros minus 14%. Anyway, so yeah, Mantic needs to push down the information that the price has changed also to the distributors.
And possibly even refund people. I mean, I guess they haven't had to pay anything yet, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so that was, you're right, it was a bit of a surprised, oh, that model looks cool, but wait, what? That's a bit... I mean, I can understand that the prices go up a little bit, like inflation in Germany is 10% at the moment, so that's insane. But
again, Clem, that's a reason why the price would have gone up, right? But on the other hand, obviously gaming is a luxury hobby. And at a time when we're all having to pay 10% more for everyday essentials, it's not a great time to be hiking the price of a model up to 35 euros.
Yeah, but
I mean,
yeah. Also, it's like it's not 10%; it's 45%, right?
Yeah.
That's the main difference. Like if they said, okay, now it's not 55, it's 60 or 65, and be like, oh, okay, well that also got up, but it's like, okay, I guess that's how it is. But
I don't even know if I want to ask the question, Clem, but do we think it was a mistake? Do we honestly think someone miskeyed that, or do we think that was...
Who knows? I don't know. I'm always optimistic and positive person, so definitely a mistake. I don't know. But yeah. I hope so.
For me, this was an auto buy, pretty much. And then all the stress of thinking about this at 80 euros and all the rest of it, even though it's now gone down to what I would have honestly expected it to cost, actually it's really bled my enthusiasm out, because then suddenly I'm thinking, well, I already have two Mantic Giants, which are, 65% the same kit. I don't actually have a Giant in my Reforge Orcs list now.
Yeah.
So, I'll sit on it, I think. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, I do have two giants as well, right? I have a normal giant for my goblins, and I have Shadow Hulk for my Night Stalkers that never made it to any of my lists, but the model is cool. I really like the model.
Yeah, that is really cool. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of... Occasionally I get the train into Frankfurt, and there's a nice big shop that's got some pretty good Kings of War selection in there, and I sometimes just wander in and impulse buy stuff. They actually have the prices at higher than retail. I got a couple of Reforge Orcs heroes in there, and they actually cost more than Mantic charge, only by a couple of euros, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suspect at some point I will just wander in there and spontaneously buy that giant, the Storm Giant. But
right.
That has kind of bled my enthusiasm for it. But I still think it's a cool model.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So that's probably a good way to look at it. And keep it for an impulse buy at some point later. Yeah, I think the last, also big news, I don't think we mentioned it before, we didn't know about it before, is they announced the next starter set as well, right? Like Ogres versus EOD.
Right.
We don't know when it will be available. I think it might be on pre-order along the Ogres in November, right? That would make sense, I suppose. And the big red book will be also in that starter, which I think is pretty nice. Yeah, so we don't know yet exactly what is inside the starter, like for the Ogres and for the EOD, which actual sprues and heroes or like elite troops will be included, but those starter sets are always amazing value. And I'm pretty sure I will get one of those as well. EOD is not that much my jam army wise, but Ogres I have some already. But so yeah, just it's a good excuse to get these guys. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was seriously thinking about it, and I was already trying to swap your EOD half of that box for some ogres, for some of my ogres, potentially thinking maybe I do an EOD army, because if you think about it, I think the book is, the new book we're just about to review, dear listener, is good value, but those books, you think, well, that's maybe €40, €45. I may as well spend another 50 odd euros and get 2 small armies. And I was thinking, well, I could actually even just play those for ambush, like have them as demo armies,
right?
But they're not particularly 2 armies I've really thought about. Before I did my Salamanders, I was seriously thinking about doing the EOD, but then I got Salamanders, so yeah, I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, let's see when the content of this box is announced, and then we can think about what we do. What I've done for my Night Stalkers, for example, is get 2 halves, 2 Night Stalkers halves. And usually that's, I think, a really good way to start an army. Like if you get twice the half the content from one army from the starter box, you, in theory, are set for that army. So yeah, I think finding a friend that also wants to get the box, or convincing a friend to get that box and split it, like get twice each the armies, is a good way to go about it.
Which was what I was asking you, buddy.
I know.
I've got these extra ogres.
I'm not decided 100% yet, but we'll see. We'll see when it comes out. But the thing is, I don't know how many more ogres I need. So maybe we'll swap and I'll sell the.
Buddy, we don't need any of this, right?
Right.
Need is not the word. It's want.
I mean, yeah. It's just I think ogres now. I have 1 mega army and 2 army boxes already of the old school ogres. Now we can say that. So. Anyway, let's see.
I think the problem will be, though, is like if you get some of the new ogres, it's going to be like, when you've got like dirty windows, you clean one window and then you just notice how dirty the other windows are, and you're like, oh damn it, I've got to clean the other ones too now. So when you've got these fancy new hard plastic models, although having said that, I think the rustic ogres actually look decent. They're cool models.
Yeah, I like them. Yeah. The legs are small, but I like them. Anyway, let's. I'll assemble one and put it next to the rest of the army and see how they look. But yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Nice.
Should we?
But yeah,
should
and
we
the value proposition, right, of that box is just tempting me. And thinking, well, if I'm spending nearly €50 on the book.
Yeah, of course.
Just chucking in another €50 and then I've got 2 starter armies. Yeah, Clem, I think we have to stop stalling and talk about. The big red book. The big red review.
Yeah. Yes.
So, first thing I think we have to say is Mantic kindly provided us a free PDF copy of the big red book. So, I think we have to put that on the line. I think we're both planning on buying paper copies of this because we both like having paper things.
Yes.
But we do have to say this was supplied by Mantic. I mean, the only reason, Clem, we do the podcast is we love Mantic stuff. But I still like to think, for better or for worse, we will offer up our honest opinions. I think from the conversation we just had about the Storm Giant, I think that's clear that, we're not going to go, oh yeah, the €80 for a Storm Giant, that's great, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
I think we are honest for the most part.
Yeah, we're fanatics and honest about it. So yeah. I mean, it was a good surprise because when you asked me initially, oh, let's do a podcast, I was like, yeah, why not? We'll have 3 people listen to it. It's gonna be fun, and in a way that now we get advanced review copy of the book. It's like, oh, that's a nice perk for this.
There's actually perks to putting all this time into making a podcast. Yeah, exactly, buddy, exactly. So let's just quickly mention the fact that the Twilight Kin are not in this book, Clem, and let's explain that to our dear listeners.
Yeah, I mean, they posted articles about it on the blog, right? And Roni also talked about it. So yes, Twilight Kin is not in this book. First, maybe we should say everything else is in the book. Like, there's no more Uncharted Empires, and there's no more. You have a separate Clash of King book, and then the old rule book, and you also have the Clash of King 2022, because if you play Riftforged Orcs, well, that's where the list is. They've thrown all of that out of the window and put everything in the book except Twilight King.
Halpi's Rift as well, right?
Sorry,
just
what?
to mention it. So they also put the Halpi's Rift book in there as well. So everything's in there, right? For third edition.
In a way, yes. Yeah, it's not directly the Halpi's stuff, but in a way, yes. They integrated everything. Like, this book is basically the big tome with everything you need, except the fluff. But that's a topic for later. And let's get back to Twilight King. So yeah, Twilight King, they said they will release sometime later this year, I guess next spring or something. Did they even mention anything? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And so the current list will still be available online, like on online list builders. And then when they come up with the new models and the new list and new everything, they will take all that stuff down. And at least they don't take anyone by surprise. Like, no one will start a TK army now and in 3 months or 6 months be like, what's going on with my army? It's kind of like, I think the Countercharge podcast mentioned it's kind of a lose-lose situation. Like, the way they do it, people complain, but if they had done it any other way, people have complained more. And so I think they're doing it the right way, is my long story short.
Can you explain to our dear listener why they've taken it out of the book? The new book.
So they will revisit the whole concept of Twilight King, from what I understand, and really mentify it, let's say. Like, and we don't exactly know to what extent, but already today Twilight King are not like the Dark Elves classic trope. Not that much. Like, they're slightly different.
So I think they started off in Kings of War, basically they were just the Dark Elves from Games Workshop, right? Fantasy Battle.
Yeah,
and then at some point they became something else.
Yeah, slowly they're trying to push them a bit in their own IP, and I think that's exactly what they should be doing, as we discussed plenty of times on the podcast. I mean, it means they can really create their own story, their own taste for it. If you look at it from a very utilitarian perspective, if they have their own thing, then there's no proxy anymore, right? Until someone creates proxies for them. But then at that point, why would you buy proxies if you can just buy the real deal?
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm super excited about it. I mean, I love the art that they've published for the upcoming Twilight King. So I haven't seen a single model yet. I don't know what the rules will be, but I'm 99% sure I'll make a Twilight King army when it comes out. It's just exactly what I want to see in Kings of War. I used to play Dark Elves in Fantasy Battle 15, 20 years ago, whatever. So yeah, just no question for me. Bring it on.
You love that glass cannon kind of style as well, right, Clem?
Absolutely, that's my play style. But even before I knew that, like 20 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing gaming wise, right? Like I never really finished an army when I was a teenager. It's just I loved the look of those models. I don't know, like dark elves are my jam. No matter how you look at it, that's my thing, and so yeah, I will get them.
Did I tell you, Clem? They were my first army really in third edition when I started playing Kings of War. I did a Northern Alliance army first, and then I was just listening to other podcasts and things, and I just thought the Twilight King sounded awesome. So I got a load of old Rune Wars models and just made an army. But they were, I think, for the first like two tournaments I went to, they were the army I took. I've never actually taken my Northern Alliance to a tournament. Mm-hmm. And 2 regiments of Abyssal Horsemen, 2 troops of Gargoyles, Impalers for days. Yeah, it was really fun. It's a really, really fun. It's like high risk, high reward kind of a play style.
Yep.
Got absolutely smashed by some Night Stalkers repeatedly, but
that's how it is.
Yeah, but it's just a really, really interesting play style. It's very technical. You have to be very precise, but when you actually win, it's really satisfying. Yeah, so I'm also very excited about this.
Yeah. So what else on the big book? Maybe overall impressions? I don't know. What are your overall impressions of this?
Overall impressions. So in terms of what this is to us as gamers, so I really, really like the fact. So we're not at 4th edition yet, but we're at edition 3.5, something like that. There've been a number of books. There've been a number of FAQs. I'm really, really happy that they've put all of this in one place and kind of cleaned things up. So just that alone, actually, for me, I would buy this because for me that's really helpful. And I find it stressful if I know the book I have is not completely up to date. Well, now it is, but they have added cool stuff to it as well. One thing I wanted to mention, Clem, is that what's interesting is they've taken, well, I suppose it's sort of more like the Gamers Edition. They don't have the fluff in this. They don't have the backstory stuff. But what they do have is a QR code to take you to the Mantic website. What do you think about that as a design, as a choice?
I think it's interesting. So I have several thoughts about this fluff aspect. For me, the only downside of this book is that it's 300 pages, and I'm waiting to see it in the flesh, so to speak. And make sure that it won't be too much of a pain in the ass to carry it around to games. Although
they've taken the fluff out, yeah.
No, but of course, like with the fluff, it would have been a 700 pages book or 600 pages book, and then that would have been too much. End of the question. So it had to be something like this, one way or another. I think I agree with you also. Like this is not 4th edition at all. But this is consolidated 3rd edition, which for me is better. Like, I really like that they took everything that was out there for 3rd edition, put it in one place, that was reviewed and revisited and cleaned up. Like the rules themselves, like the rule section is now so much better with tons of diagrams of charges, situations, and all the stuff. Like, they really did some work there. And for me, it's amazing because this is stuff that we've been talking about, and I think that the community has been talking about as well. And they listened, and that's what they did. How amazing!
You talked about this on the podcast, right, Clem?
Yeah, so we talked about it in the podcast, but also in Fanatics, there were discussions like, "Hey, I don't understand this situation. Can someone draw a picture about it? And hey, here's my drawing. What happens then? Blah blah blah." Now I'm not saying that every single situation is covered in the book, but they've added a ton of diagrams to the book, and it goes in the same direction as they consolidated 3rd edition quite a lot, and I love this. So now to get back on your fluff question, they had to split it to a different book or different resource. I like that it's online because then it's available to anyone who wants to have a look at it. Like the link that the QR code sends you to is not active yet on the website. Like I checked, and you get page doesn't exist yet, but I'm sure it will go up end of October when the book is out. I like it. I think they could have gone slightly further and do like Firefight and Deadzone and split this book in two, because then you would have had let's say 100 and something pages rule book and 150 200 pages faction book. I think that would have been interesting, like, to... But then I don't know, because it still means you always carry both books anyway, so I'm torn. What I'm saying with this is, you have to admit, it's cool to see also like tons of cool pictures, of models and with the stories and the fluff. And there are cool pictures in the Big Red Book. I've seen quite a few when I was going through it, like this cool art, cool model pictures and so on. So, although I'm not a big fluff person, in a way I like sometimes to go through like cool pictures and cool stories. So I hope they put really, let's say, a lot of stuff on the website and a lot of stuff about the fluff. And it's better to not have it carried around in the book. Because let's be honest, when you go someplace to play a game, this is not when you want to have a look at pictures or read stories or be inspired by the universe. And in a way, when you read about all of this, you don't need to have 200 pages of army lists, right? Like, you want to read stories, you want to see models, you don't give a shit about statistics. I think, like...
I think as well, Mantic have just been listening to their customers a bit more, right? Because most people that play Kings of War play it as a competitive game. And, if you're just kind of forced to lug an even more massive book around... that you only look in half of it. I mean, if you're going to a tournament or you're going to a game, how often would you need to look in the lore book?
Yeah, no, that's completely
section?
right. That's absolutely right. I'd rather they removed 50 pages of lore from the rulebook and add 50 pages of diagrams of how charges work. I mean, hopefully you don't need 50 pages to explain that, but you see what I mean, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm completely honest, if I were doing 4th edition Kings of War, we talked previously about things we'd like to see different. I'd like to see, armies put into different buckets other than good, bad, neutral. We talked about this at length.
Right.
I would use that as an excuse to completely reset the lore, because the Kings of War lore is totally fine, but it's totally unexceptional. There's nothing wrong with it. There's cool bits and pieces, but if you've read Tolkien, if you've read, let's be honest, fantasy battles lore, if you've read many other things, there's nothing in the Kings of War lore that's going to surprise you. The elves are doing stuff with magic. One guy makes a terrible mistake with this magic mirror, and it sounds an awful lot like the webways and. It's fine, but it all feels like it was very much mapped onto other existing things. And fantasy tends to be like that, right?
Yeah.
That's Tolkien tends to be the granddaddy of all this stuff. It's not bad fiction at all, but it's all so familiar. Anyway, I'm repeating myself now, and we're getting off topic. So, but yeah.
I'm not sure if they need to reset the fluff. I think, again, if you get back to the Twilight King stuff, I think the way they do it is sort of smart. Like, I have some of a very, very basic, even if it's a bit shallow, foundation, and then tackle one army at a time and be like, okay, what do we want to do with the Twilight King now? And then develop this stuff.
But this is exactly what I'm thinking of, buddy. It's like this idea that this is our vision. This is like we're mantifying stuff.
Yep.
What is Mantic's Twilight Kin? Not, what was the old Warhammer Fantasy one. Let's just reset and restart and do exactly what our vision is, so we can do something that's a little bit different. It's not so easy to proxy models in. It's, there's something interesting and a little bit unique there,
Yeah. No, I agree. So, are we saying we expect to see a good novel about Twilight Kin along the model releases? That's what we hope.
That would be great, wouldn't it? They tried it a little bit with the EOD. There was the Breath of the Desert, the free 3-part story. And that was interesting, particularly because obviously they were fighting Yogas, and then only later did we find out ogres were in the 2-player box set. So, yeah, be interesting.
Yep.
I definitely think they want to pull all this stuff together.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I know with, I'm no expert, but when it comes to publishing, I know that things can be chopped and changed on a whim. It may not be necessarily the easiest thing in the world to get a novel out at a specific month or whatever, but I think that would be the aim at least.
Yeah, it takes a lot of planning, and there's a lot of work. Like it's not just about writing it. There's also a lot of editing and a lot of work that goes into making it. But I think they're doing the work in that direction. So let's see with the release what we get, and it'll be exciting. Should we move on to, I think another big exciting piece for the Big Red Book is the ambush rules, right?
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm really excited about this. So a lot of people like Clem just think, well, it's your game, do what you like with it. Whereas I sort of need to be told a little bit more. No, you're allowed. You're allowed to play smaller games with Kings of War. It's okay. That's a thing you can do. So right. I think Clem would be totally fine playing smaller games anyway. Whereas I like the idea, it's called Ambush. So they've made, basically what they've done is they've made some very, very easy modifications to list building. They've made some very easy and light modifications to the existing scenarios. And basically it's, Kings of War on a 3x3 board going up to, I think it's 995 points.
You can play more, yeah.
It's going to be really super interesting. So I think, I'm already thinking, well, there's Northern Alliance units that I never take. Skirmisher type units that, hey, I think maybe in a troop would be really interesting in ambush. Yeah,
so I agree. It's true. I think they put some work into it as well. Like it's not just you're allowed to do this what you already were doing. They added a few things to it, and I guess it was also play tested a little bit to make it work properly. And so. There aren't that many changes, but those changes are smart from what I understand of it. And I really think it will create a slightly different and exciting gaming experience, which I think is really cool. Like even if you already have a 2,300 point army, I'm sure if you play an ambush game with those models at the smaller size, it will be a slightly different experience, and I think it's a really cool thing. It will let people get started with a bit less models and a smaller army. And I see it already in the club, right? Like talking to people, they're like, Kings of War, yeah, it sounds great, but man, that's so scary. 100 models, I will never be able to do that. And even, close hobby friends who I repeatedly say, here's how you can paint model fast, and here's how you can do it, and look, I've done a full army last week and all this stuff, and still people are still kind of afraid from it. I tend to think there's no convincing them so much, whereas when they see ambush, they're like, oh yeah, ambush, yeah, I can do that.
That's manageable.
Yeah, that's manageable. A couple troops, 2 regiments, a hero, and a monster. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that I can do. You know what I mean? And once they've done that, pushing it to 2,300 points might not be that much of a stretch anymore, right? It's a reasonable first step in a way, and I think that could make a big difference for a lot of people. So definitely ambush for me is the big thing in this book. I mean, I love the overall idea, as we mentioned, it's a compendium with everything, blah, 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 it's consolidated. But ambush is the sexy, for me at least, it is the sexy new thing that's coming up for 2023. Yeah.
So I don't think it solves it, but I think it goes a long way to addressing the biggest problem Kings of War had, and that's getting new players in. Because as you say, Clem, getting even hobby people to do a full 2,300 point army, a lot of people are put off with that, rightly or wrongly. And as you said, Clem, and we said many times, actually, if you know kind of a few tips and tricks, and I can show you, it's actually not that big of a deal. But I know a lot of people who I try to get into the game and they never make it past doing their first unit,
Yep.
which is such a shame because I feel like actually once you've done one unit, you go, okay, well that was a lot easier than I thought it would be, and actually, do you know what? That was really fun to do.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really nice way to do it. Something we've talked about previously, Clem, is obviously the 10mm or the 15mm.
Right.
The reason I don't like that is it concerns me it'll split the community, and Mantic don't make models for that. So I feel like it's not quite the same, but it's a similar thing. You know, you'll probably be able to play it on an IKEA table,
Yeah.
in your kitchen or whatever.
From that perspective, yes.
I think it's smart. It's it's a simple. It's a simple, elegant solution to one of, or not quite solution, but boy does it help one of their biggest problems with the game.
Yep, I entirely agree. So for 10mm, like half scale Kings of War, I think it's kind of a thing on its own. I think it's a mistake that Mantic does nothing at all for it, because it really, really, really works well. Like the Kings of War rules are perfect for this scale, and this scale is perfect for Kings of War rules. Like they both go so well together. I'm honestly sad that they don't say, okay, we don't really have models for that yet, but if you want to play half scale, here's a 2-page PDF that tells you this is how officially you do it, and that kind of doesn't split the community too much, right? Because all the people that I know that have a 10mm Kings of War army also have a 28mm scale army. And the other thing is, I'm sure many people who are scared of doing their first Mantic army, like the first Kings of War army, they also didn't really get a good taste of the game. And it's maybe a bit hard to get motivated to do the effort of building an army. But once you see how great the rules are, how fun it is to play a Kings of War game, I think you get a lot more motivated to build your second and third and fourth army. At least,
and it's super addictive. It's an addictive thing. Yeah.
So, but my point is, I'm certain if you let people very easily do a 10mm army, and they play the game and they see how cool it is, then they will definitely look at, I also want a 28mm army, because then I can go play a tournament, I can play with more people, this awesome game that I now love from like an actual experience of playing it. I don't know, I'm completely biased, obviously.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, we're getting off topic.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know guys in Wiesbaden who play in small scale, and they've no intention of playing a 28mm.
Kings of War. Do they play Kings of War?
Kings of War. Yeah, Kings of War. Yeah. I don't know if they're in any way typical, but
I don't know.
Anyway,
yeah.
let's move it on.
So, is just to get back to Ambush. I hope we will see Ambush played at events as well. I mean, I definitely wanna, or like next gaming day that I organize, there will be Ambush games. Like that's not even a question for me. For demo games, I think it will also be a very good resource. I do demo games with ambush rules, and then immediately see, okay, I could be playing that game with that little amount of models and so on. And and also like the articles that I've been doing for the small blog that we have, like the get started with an army, like a practical guide. Obviously, ambush army lists. I will update all of that stuff with it. So yeah, for me, ambush, big, massive novelty for Big Red Book, and I super happy it's in there. Looking forward to playing my first ambush game, hopefully soon.
I hope it goes into Easy Army as well.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because the army building lists is different. Like that's the key aspect. Is the only difference in a way, right? Like everything that's in rules stays the same. That's a very good point. I hope they do. Maybe it's in the app. Who knows?
But I mean, I'm really looking forward to us playing a game of this month, Clem.
Should we say a bit more, like on a very practical level, what ambush is? I think everyone knows already what we've been saying so far, right? So how does ambush work? From what I remember, you can take troops, you can take regiments, As many as you want of them. Hordes and legions are forbidden.
I think there's about a 200 point limit, so things
depending on the
units have
size
to be cheaper than
depending
on the size. That's
depending
right.
on the size, nothing can cost more than 200 points or 250 points, magical items included. For unlocks, every troop and every regiment unlocks one irregular stuff.
Unless they have the fly keyword, I think.
No, everything that flies is irregular.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, and you cannot get duplicates of heroes, monsters, titans, war machines, right? Mm-hmm. And you can get, if I remember correctly, it's up to 3 of them, like 3 monsters, titans, war machines in your list, and that's it, isn't it? I think that's
pretty much it, buddy. Yeah.
And obviously the table is slightly smaller. Deployment is still 3x3, so deployment is still 12 inches from the center line. So your deployment zone is slightly smaller, but you have less stuff to put in there. No legion, no horde, so it should be fine. The scenarios are adjusted to the table size, obviously. Like dominate is 9 inches instead of 12. Invade works as it is. Control is 4 squares instead of only of 6. That kind of stuff
makes perfect sense,
right?
Yeah,
so
makes perfect sense. Fewer tokens if there are tokens.
Absolutely, yeah. So as we said, like there's really not much to it, right? Like I just described it in 2 minutes. Maybe I forgot something, but I really think it still does a huge difference to how the game is actually played and how easily you can get into it. So super exciting. And guys, start making ambush rules. What about you go to a big tournament and you play 2 2,300 point games and 2 ambush games, right? How cool would that be? Like you have to bring 2 lists to a tournament.
That would be really cool, buddy.
See what I mean?
That would be super cool. Yeah, that would be super cool. Because I was kind of thinking about people could play it on Friday night before. But actually, I really like that idea. That's cool.
Yeah, why make it just as a side event, I think?
Totally.
So I think they also mentioned to play it on the clock, isn't it, in the book?
Clocks of war, they called it.
Right,
yeah, so you get, depending how many points you've got, you get a certain number of minutes, and you get less time as the game goes on, basically.
Yeah, so if you play 3 games in a row, first game you get 30 minutes, second game 25, and third game 20 minutes. Is that right? Is that what they said?
I thought it was the different rounds you get less time, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, rounds of the tournament. Like your clock.
There you go. Okay, I misunderstood
clock,
that then.
I guess, right? Your clock doesn't reset between rounds of the game. So I think it's game. For me, the way I understood it is you go a Saturday afternoon to an event, you play 3 games. First game you have 30 minutes on the clock. Second one 25 minutes on the clock because you know your army a bit better. And third game 20 minutes on the clock. That's what I understood from it.
So, I'm sure we're allowed to read this outright. Ambush Games present the opportunity for experienced tournament organisers and clubs to try out a special tournament format known as Clocks of War. In a Clocks of War tournament, the time allotted for each game decreases. Yeah, there you go, Clem, you're right. As rounds progress, ramping up the pressure. I'm seeing words like rounds and thinking, yeah. Anyway, when coupled with Ambush Games, a 3-round Clocks of War tournament can be completed in just a couple of hours using the following guidelines to structure each round. All times are per player. So round 1 is 3 minutes for every 100 points. So you're exactly right, Clem. Round 2 is 2.5 minutes for every 100 points, and round 3 is 2 minutes for every 100 points.
That's
Interesting.
That's it.
Thus, in a 1,000-point tournament, the first game would last half an hour, the second would last 25 minutes, and the final game would last just 20 minutes. There you go. Awesome.
So, in a 5-game event, one of those 5 games is actually a Clocks of War event. Boom.
That sounds really cool.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this weekend, for example, Clem, is the UK GT, right? So we'll probably do a little section on that next month to maybe talk about how that went.
Yeah.
But obviously we're not attending. But we played when we went last year or the year before. Was there a day we had 4 games of full 2,300 points Kings of War? That's a lot of Kings of War. That's a lot of brain work in a
Only
day.
3. It's only 3, but still a lot.
2 of those games were ambush. It would make such a difference, right? With or without Clocks of War.
Yeah, I think you can have a slightly faster game and maybe less brain juice. I'm not sure. I want to see how it actually feels on the table. But
I also feel like it's going to be a different skill, and maybe different armies will be better in ambush. So maybe some armies are really, have a really good time playing 2,300 points.
Yeah, but I'm sure
maybe they're not so good at smaller levels.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a format there like to do a hybrid ambush plus normal size game, like tournament or event, and play some of your games with ambush rolls, some of your games with full size army, and it kind of pushes you to build your army list in a different way. You know what I mean? Like if you're 2,300
I'm really
point
excited
list,
about this. Now you're talking about it. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah,
I think there are cool stuff that you could do. And I'm not even talking about a narrative event, right? Because in the narrative event, when you play like a smaller ambush kind of scenario, like a fast game, like who gets to choose the side of the table for the 2,300 points? Well, we don't roll a dice. We play ambush game. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Or like who goes first?
There's no reason it'll work any worse for competitive play than Kings of War, full fat Kings of War does.
I don't think so.
Great for tournaments. Yeah.
So again, really looking forward to it, guys. Start making lists for ambush, and let's bring in new people to play Kings of War with this great new tool. Was also my takeaway from it.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, and. And we've got a few other things we still haven't talked about the new book.
Yeah.
That's go for it, buddy. Go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 more things, right? One is legendary games, so super large games, siege rules, and then obviously the army lists themselves. So let's start with legendary games, maybe. So what are legendary games? They've described it already a little bit. It's games with 3,000 points or more. And so, again, they updated, give you guidelines for scenarios, but nothing groundbreaking there. The really cool stuff for legendary games, from my perspective at least, is there are quite a few pages overall, right, for legendary games.
Yeah, there are.
Because there's a big table of additional spells that you can get, and it reminds me the Alpes Rifts campaign stuff. Remember where you could play on, let's say, the Earth plane or whatever it was, or like the ethereal plane, and on that plane you can buy special artifacts for your army. Well, that didn't
special
make it.
Spells, yeah.
And then special spells. Like each round of the game, you roll a dice for spellcaster tiers, I think. I don't remember exactly. And then it tells you this round, well, you can get this bonus on one of your units, or you can cast this spell or stuff like this. And so this made it into legendary games. And I didn't review how many spell options are there, like 40, 50, whatever. Like it's a lot of stuff that you can plan ahead before the game. But my impression is it really brings an element of epic game. Like you get huge armies, but also massive spells. And if it's like Alpes Rift, it doesn't entirely change the balance of the game. Like Alpes Rift, for me at least, didn't completely destroy, that's a game I love that is balanced and it's fun to play. But it gives a small additional taste. And I really enjoy that. And so I'm happy to see it come back with a vengeance, like with a lot more options for legendary games.
Massive games. Powerful units, incredibly swingy spells, really, really, powerful stuff. And again, it's all stuff we've been kind of asking for Kings of War, right?
Yeah, because it makes for memorable games, right? Like, it's not just like, it was super on the edge, like super balanced, like super competitiveness. Like, like we spent a whole Saturday afternoon with 8,000 points per side, on a 12 by 4 table, and there was a huge spell or whatever, like big magic stuff happening. And also in Legendary Games, they gave us rules to create our own monsters. So if you have any model that doesn't really exist in the rules yet, well, you can create rules for it and you get points for it. I guess if you play that with a nasty mindset, you can probably create an awful monster that no one wants to play against, right? Which I think is just not how you should use those. But at least if you want to create something new and cool for a big game, then now you have the tools to do it. That's quite new and that's quite exciting as well.
What's really interesting as well is to create these rare monsters ourselves. And I think it's great this is in here. Right? I think this is so incredibly fun. As you say, Clem, it's totally exploitable. But if somebody does that, thank you very much, get out of my house,
Yeah.
They're not coming back.
Yeah.
But what's super interesting is it's giving us basically, I guess this is what the rules committee use for creating, units in the game and pointing them.
Yeah, the baseline. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's super interesting. And the other thing, Clem, I don't know if you read, there's something called Colossal Titans.
Right, yes, I did.
Which is just ridiculous. If you want to have Godzilla in your game, sure, do that, and then just put him on a suitable size base. And it's very much to that kind of early GW, do it yourself. It's your, we're giving you some stuff to play a game, but
yeah,
just go away and have fun, right? Just have fun with it, and I really love that. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how it actually works, right? Like when you have, let's say, a 5,000 points per side battle, and obviously like pretty large armies, and then you put a dragon that is like nerve 35, 37, 25 attacks or something like this, right? Because that's the kind of colossal monsters that they mention. So
but it's definitely going to kill something every turn unless you double one. But it's going to kill something every turn, but it can only kill one thing every turn, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah, no, but not just this, but also, yeah, I think it's an interesting new way to play the game, and I'm curious about it. Right, like it kind of makes me want to plan a Saturday with a couple of friends and be like, okay, let's not take the 2,300 point list. Let's make 4,000 point lists, and see.
I think
what
we
can
have
do.
to do it at some point, Clem. To be honest, the only difficulty we've got is we're just so far away from each other. So actually,
Right.
physically getting the models. But other than that, to be honest, this is this would be really fun.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
get a couple of players aside, so it makes it
Yep.
a little bit easier. A couple of people rolling all the dice, moving the models and stuff.
Yeah,
I just think it would be such a fun day, wouldn't it?
absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, like you love double games, right? Now, let's not make it 1,000 plus 1,000. Let's make it 25 plus 25, and on a 12 by 4, and that's it, right? That's Legendary Games for you, right there.
And the other thing I was kind of thinking, Clem, as well, was like, well, we haven't talked about this yet. There's also siege rules in the book. And I was
Right, so
thinking,
that was the next thing. Yeah.
One massive army with colossals and Godzilla and just huge monsters attacking a castle. Like, wow, that'd be cool. And you could even do that. Well, what if two armies are attacking the castle at the same time? And
Right.
you could just have. I mean, it could go all horribly, horribly wrong. But if you've got players with the right, we're just here to have fun, right?
Yeah.
It just sounds like such a funny day to me. It just sounds like great fun.
Yeah, I think those two things are... So Siege we can say more about in a second, but those two things for me are other ways to play the game, right? So
Yeah.
Ambush is one, but Ambush I think you can really play competitively, and it's in a way the closest to what we already know of how to play Kings of War. And legendary games and Siege games are more on the narrative side of things, obviously, because it's not that balanced necessarily, but that's not the point. And these things, for me, are also quite smart to add to the game, because what do you think about when you think mass battle, like fantasy mass battle? Well, obviously, it's the largest army you can think of storming the gates of a castle, right? Or legendary armies in a humongous monster like swiping aside like cavalry or infantry, like all the epic movies that you can see and stuff like this.
The Battle of Minas Tirith,
All the stuff,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
This is what you think about when you think mass battle games, like in fantasy environment. And so adding those gameplay modes, so to speak, to the rules, to give the option, I think it's cool. I mean, I think it's interesting for all, especially for old players. Not necessarily getting old, but you know what I mean, like players who have already several armies, who played quite a few standard games. Well, now we can spend a Saturday afternoon or even a full weekend doing those kind of games. And so I think it's interesting that they put it out there in the book for us to have fun with and try it out.
It's super exciting, and it leans into, one of Kings of War's great strengths is just how beautiful it looks on the table.
Yes.
These beautiful, like, ranked up armies, and it's just taking that and turning it up to 11.
Absolutely, yes.
And just, if we went and played this with, like, crazy big monsters, and, I've actually got a castle set, we can use the castle set, and just had all this on the table, people are just going to come over and go, what are you guys doing? And, of course, with the Kings of War rule set, it's clean and clear.
Right.
There are other fantasy battle rule sets which are very, very crunchy. There's lots of looking things up in tables.
Right.
There's lots of having to do maths in your. Kings of War does away with all of that.
Yeah.
So I think you really can still have a fun time and not get bogged down.
Right.
By doing these absolutely crazy adventures on the table that we're always going to remember. I think it's so exciting.
I agree. I mean, for other systems or stuff, like I have memories of. It took you all Saturday plus late in the evening to play 3 rounds of it, and your brain would explode. At least maybe I was just stupid as a teenager. I don't know. And so obviously you couldn't make an even larger game because it was just impossible to handle. Whereas Kings of War, well, it works pretty well in a couple of hours for a standard game. So if you have all Saturday or all weekend to spend on it, then yes, you can do a very, very large game. And I think that's really nice.
It feels like there's really something for everybody in this book, but it also feels like all of these things are for me. I'm interested in all of these things to varying degrees, but I'm still really interested.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's these 3 new ways to play the game, I think are really well done and really smart. I want to try it out and see does that really work. But from reading it gave me the impression that they seriously worked on it in a way. Like it doesn't feel like, we had 2 hours and we wanted to add a few pages and so that's what we did. No, it really, for me, when I read it, it felt like a work of love in a way. Okay, this is something we want to add to the game. And like the siege rule, for example, right? We haven't said much about it. There are so many pages. Like it's not just, you can just change deployment a little bit and then put some impassable terrain that is castle walls and that's it, right?
So there's basically 2 setup options for how the castle is configured to start with, right? So you can pick, do you want a line all the way down the table, or is the castle kind of in a square shape? But what really impresses me is the fact that all of these castle rules, it's all terminology and rules that is already familiar to us as a Kings of War player.
Yeah.
They've fit these rules into the existing rule set. We don't have, all this crazy new rules that somehow changes the game. This is still going to feel like a game of Kings of War.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in there to digest, and I didn't play a game of it, so it's really hard to give experienced feedback from it. Like I hope we could hear about it from playtesters or stuff like this. But agreed, like it really gave me an impression, this is a Kings of War game that has something added on top of it that makes sense and that will work well with it. And really exciting to try it out. I guess it's also not something that you just do in a casual way, have a couple of hours, or, well, not a casual, but like an evening game or something, like let's set up everything for the siege. It's probably more a Saturday afternoon kind of endeavor. but it's super exciting to think about it.
Super exciting. And the other thing we should probably say is both the attacker and defender can purchase equipment.
Oh yeah, tons of it.
Which cost points, right? And there's loads of it. So it goes from really obvious things to, sturdier walls, to tower artillery, to wall traps. But also it's really cool stuff like you can have secret tunnels going under the fortifications so you can attack the attackers from behind. But you can have an enchanted castle, you can have a living castle, you can have a damned obelisk. So obviously as you're building your castle, you can make it super themey. So if you've got an Empire of Dust army and you want an Empire of Dust castle, you're going to go for the damned obelisk. And obviously you're going to model your castle or buy your castle model to fit that theme. And it's just, hey, this is really cool, I mean, really, really cool.
Did you see the huge table that tells you for every army what kind of equipment they're kind of allowed to have? When I saw it was
exactly.
like, well, that's impressive, right? Like, there's like all the army lists vertically and all the equipment. It's like a 20-something by 15 table, right? Like with yes or no in each square. And it really gave me the impression, they really thought a lot about it, like to make it super thematic and really customize your army list and your castle and like your offensive or defensive siege equipment. Just gave me kind of a boost of motivation to. I kind of want to take one of the armies that I already have and kind of is on the shelf and I haven't played so much, like the Forces of the Abyss, for example, because I have so many of them, and play a huge battle with them. Like, how cool is that if these guys kind of try to assault a castle, right? It's just a new way to play models that I already have, and I'm like, okay, well, I think playing them competitively, I mean, I still suck at it, but I've done it for 1 year, and now, they can go on the shelf until something really dramatically changes with them. Otherwise, which will probably never happen. And otherwise, I'll kind of be on the shelf and look cool, and I'll play them maybe once in a while to lend armies to friends. Whereas now, with Siege, I'm like, demons will storm the castle for sure. You see what I mean?
Isn't that totally the point of the new book? It's just completely refreshed your excitement and your interest in one of the armies you already have, right? It's shaking
absolutely.
Things up.
That's exactly that's completely true.
So Clem, we talked about the thematic castles rule table, right? So I'm going to give you a little quiz. There's one army that can have all of the possible upgrades, and I want you to tell me what it is. This is going to make great radio.
The ogres, because they're mercenary, they can do anything.
You're in the right kind of sphere. It's the kingdoms of men.
The armies that you want dead.
Kingdoms of men. You can do whatever you want. You can do, you can do a fortress of flame. You can do a sacred stronghold. You can do cursed walls. You can do shrouded in darkness. Kingdoms of men, anything goes. You do whatever you like.
Yeah, I mean, Kingdoms of Men are kind of like we can do anything and everything, model-wise, and
they shouldn't be in the
sense.
game. Is what you're saying, right, Clem?
No, I think I thought more about it. I think it's we're again digressing pretty hard. My latest impression is it would be a mistake to remove them entirely. I hope they kind of make their own at some point, but
is that not what Basilia was supposed to be?
What?
Wasn't that what Basilia was supposed to be?
Not really, right? Aunt Basilia, I don't know. It's a different topic. Let's get back to it another time.
As we enjoy a digression, and we enjoy very much going around in circles.
Right. I think the other thing that we haven't done at all yet, and that actual players are interested in, is list changes. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, I did not spend 3 days going through every single entry in the book to compare to the existing entries, and I don't think you have either, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah, and Also, even if we love the game and we play several armies, we suck at it, and so I did not find like the big new revelation like this army is going to be the
new hotness,
ass-kicking army
the OP.
for 2023. Like obviously we are the wrong people if you were expecting this kind of information. My impression, though, from looking at it, is there aren't that many changes, right? Like it's pretty much what we already had, consolidated and improved slightly here and there. Like I've looked at the Night Stalker lists because Night Stalkers were my army for 2022, and also I think we can reasonably say they were a very loved and competitively played army. Like, didn't they win Masters? I think they did, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was expecting to see tons of changes in Night Stalkers, right? And
people that know what they're talking about say they are the strongest army at the moment, I think.
Might be true, yeah. And so I looked at it and was like, I don't see a single change. Like, seriously. Like, I looked at it and was like, okay, I'm sure Soul Flayers will now be more expensive, or, lose Wind Blast, or it will be Wind Blast less than what it is now. It's like 4 or whatever. It'll be Wind Blast 2 or something, or not a single change. Soul Flayers are exactly the same. It took me literally opening the review PDF and Easy Army and go through every single entry one at a time to find changes. And you know what changed for Night Stalkers? They just removed some attacks on the Scarecrows. For example, the Horde had 30 attacks, I think, and now it has 25. And it's also slightly cheaper. I don't remember, like 125 points instead of 130. Maybe. I'm quoting that from memory, so I'm probably wrong about it. So not a big change. And the other unit that had a similar treatment is the Reapers, which, okay, I don't know, like removing attacks to the Reapers for me is a bit disappointing. I would have preferred to have them slightly more expensive with still the same amount of attacks. But yeah, and honestly, maybe I'm just bad at it, at reading, but those are the only 2 changes that I saw in the Night Stalker list. So
yeah, I mean, I've done exactly what you've done, right, Clem? It's like, I'm going to have a look at the armies I play, right? So I've looked through Northern Alliance, I can't see any changes. I might be wrong, but I don't think there's anything that's changed there.
Probably a few points here. And I thought, the Northern Frostfang obviously will be more expensive. Nope.
I don't think it is.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, it's exactly the same.
The Icekin Bolt Hunters, they're now 190 points for the regiment. That may have gone up slightly, but I honestly don't know.
I don't remember. Yeah, I mean, we don't know the game so well to these...
I could have looked that up in my printed book, but I haven't.
The printed book, or
maybe that's not correct, yeah. So, that's... I can't see any... One that I saw is the Gladestalkers. The Gladestalkers, from what I had a quick look at it. Exactly the same, but plus 10 points for the regiment. Is that some? I think that's it. Oh, plus 15 10
points.
or 15, yeah.
So
that's one of the units that everyone is saying. Rob, when he came on our show on episode 3, he was saying that they're too good. They needed to go up in points. So, and also
they did.
These things, like a lot of these things, I think it's really easy to kind of over-nerf something. Something may be slightly too good, but obviously in a perfect world, everything is viable, right? That's what we're aiming for. And I think it would be tempting to kind of nerf a unit in a couple of different ways and then maybe do it a little bit too much, and then the unit is never seen on the table, and that's obviously not great either. So maybe putting them up by 15 points or whatever it was, maybe that makes the difference, but still they're still a good unit.
Yeah, I think it does make a difference, right? Like if you had 4 of those in your list before, well, that's a lot of points.
Suddenly you're having to drop a unit, or some very expensive magical item.
You have to make a real change. The other thing that I've noticed, so formations, from what I could see, they're still there. Still the same formations as last year. I didn't notice any big change or point increase or anything, or decrease. It's just I think there were a few FAQ entries, like erratas entries for the formations, that I'm sure have been applied to it. So your existing list didn't go out of the window, I think is the main answer here. And I wouldn't expect also a complete shake-off of what works and what doesn't and so on. And I think it's good. I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of the existing lists right now. So, and I don't really feel like there was a huge issue with what armies are out there. Like, sure, Gladestalkers, they're a bit annoying. Sure, the goblin shooting, if you do it in a certain way, is kind of pain in the ass as well. But it's not like stopping people from going to events because, why would I go? I'm going to see the same spam of the same stuff. You know what I mean? And so
I do know what you mean.
The game was in a, I think, pretty good place before. And it's basically in the same place with tiny touches without disturbing the balance too much, as you mentioned as well. So I think that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I did check. So Trident Realm, I couldn't see any changes at all. The only thing I would mention though, Clem, is actually in our beloved Salamanders, there is the Phoenix has changed quite significantly. So off the top of my head, I think it was 195 points previously. Is that right, Clem?
I think you're right. 95 or 90. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, something like this. So it's now 145 points.
Right. Yeah.
It's still height 6. I think it's dropped down in speed because I think it was speed 10, or am I making that up? It's now speed 8.
It was speed 10, you're right. I think it was like just a big flyer, sort of.
Yeah.
Right? Because I remember we said, but why? Because he's not a fighter. Like, you don't really need... Like, it's a support character in a way. I mean, it's always nice to be able to... But
with unit strength 1. Yeah. So it's still melee 3, range 4, defense 3. I don't think any of that has changed. It's got crushing 1, which it had before, I think, fly, nimble, and regen 4 up. I think that's all the same. It's got something, so a spell or a ranged attack, fire sparks, so it's 18 inches, which has got 10 attacks and steady aim.
Right.
Oh yeah, so that is a shooting attack, so that's on 4s. So that's kind of cool. It doesn't have...
well, it's not a spell
I think that's
anymore.
really good. It doesn't have any piercing, but it's still, I think that's pretty decent. I mean, to take chaff off and things,
so it's
really good.
It's better because... So what I did is I just opened Easy Army and have the old, like the, let's say, soon-to-be old Phoenix, and I have the review PDF on the other side of my screen. So,
Perfect.
Yes, it had Fireball 10. Now it does have Fire Sparks 10. So it's range 18 instead of range 12, so that makes it actually useful.
Doesn't have shattering now, though, I guess.
Doesn't have the shattering. It doesn't have the fact that it's a spell, so you don't lose cover and individual, for example. Whereas ranged attacks,
You do.
you do. But does that matter too much? I'm not sure. The nerve increased, right? It used to be 14-16, now it's 16-18. So that's better.
Ooh.
That does make a difference. It lost 2 attacks. It was 5 attacks. It's now 3 attacks. And again, I think it makes sense. It is more of a support character. And so
It was still heal 5, wasn't it? So that hasn't changed.
heal 5, yes. The heal is the same, absolutely.
And then, Clem, so this is super interesting. So this is an option for 30 points. So Ancient Phoenix. So you can only have one of these. So lower defense from 3+ to 2+, while also losing the Nimble special rule. Change regeneration to 3 up and gain both the Radiance of Life and Cloak of Death special rules.
For 30 points.
Oh, for 30 points, yeah. So defense 2+, but then you're going to be doing an awful lot of healing on yourself. And then you've got Radiance of Life and Cloak of Death. You don't have to pick one. It's doing both.
Yes.
If you don't just get it shot off in one turn, that's super interesting. It's not inspiring, though. I feel like the Phoenix should be inspiring.
That is, yeah, that's true. It probably should have inspiring. Did it have inspiring before? It didn't.
I mean, if you're a warrior and you're not inspired by a massive flaming chicken, what's wrong with you? Honestly.
Yeah, like a regenerating flaming chicken, right? Like
Exactly.
It's losing its head, and then burp, it comes back. So yeah, no, you're right. But I think we had a discussion about it, right? Like it's kind of weird. Like it's in the middle between. It's not a good melee character. Like it's not a good fighting character, but it's.
And it's not a particularly good support character either, if we're honest.
Right. And I think they put it more in the support character, and I like it.
Which is what we wanted, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. What I would want to see is heal more, or at least an option to upgrade the heal a little bit further. And inspiring, you're right. Although, when I think about my Salamanders list where I have a Phoenix, because of course I want a burning chicken in my list. I mean, it's a
The
fire.
model's so cool.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's a fire-oriented list like yours, and of course there's a Phoenix in there. Of course there is. But I wouldn't really need him to be inspiring for the way you use it, so I guess it doesn't make a difference, and it's better.
No, that's fair. If it I just feel like it fits the theme. But Clem, height 6, 16, 18 nerve, is that just going to get shot off?
I don't think so. Yes, if you have a good shooting list, you can definitely take it. I mean, I have Void Lurkers. I mean, it's a stealthy defense 4, so it's quite different when you think about it. But to Lightning Bolts, it's sort of similar. And yes, you can take it off in one turn if you want to, but if you do that, it means you're not taking something else off of the board. And it's only 145 points after all. So if you focus all of your fire to remove 145 points, maybe it's not that bad of a trade-off. I don't know. So
that's a good point.
I think I like him. I think I like the.
I think it's super cool. It feels more interesting than it was previously.
Yeah, and the other thing is, to be honest, 16-18 versus 14-16 makes a big difference. Big difference, especially with Regeneration 4 and Radiance of Life. Oh no, wait, Radiance of Life doesn't apply to yourself. Yes, so I think the new Phoenix is definitely going in the direction that we wanted it to go. And to be honest, that's the biggest change that I've seen of all of the lists. Maybe there's something that we missed. No, there is certainly something that we missed. But we'll see. We'll see about it, and that means you guys still have some surprise when you get your book and have a look at it. One thing that I noticed as well, I don't know if you've seen it, Chris, is for the theme lists. Initially, I thought that they removed some of the theme lists, like made them normal lists, but I was just wrong. The one thing that seems to be different, but again, did I? Maybe before I say it, I can quickly double check. I think the herd used to be a list on its own. Is that right?
I thought it was a theme list of nature.
Was it always so?
I thought so.
If that's the case, then it didn't change. Because I was like, wait, the herd was always its own list, wasn't it?
Nope.
And then, well, can I see it somewhere here? Now that would make sense that it's a nature list. All right, there. So there's probably no change there. Because I was like, I thought it was a list on its own. And then now it's a theme list.
But like, at no point did I go and get my book to check any of this. So there's me going, God, has this changed? It's just unknowable. And like, well, I could have. I literally could have checked.
I did. No, I did. I opened mine, but every time I see something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely new. And then I go back to the other book and check. Oh no, that was just me not knowing anything about the game. And then I check the list again. Oh yeah, that's really cool. That's new. Oh no, that was already there.
That was already there. Yeah, and there's me looking at the Skylord on Scorchwing. Oh, only 120 points. And then I'm thinking, wait, I think it was always 120 points.
Yeah, so it's just anyway. I didn't check the Salamanders more in detail, like go one element per one element to check how my new army has evolved. I mean, the Phoenix definitely did change, but the rest I have no idea. So that listeners tell you how much I care about making my list the absolute best it can be. But yeah, overall I think it's probably pretty similar anyway. Like let's be realistic. It's not like any changes that happen that will make me win more games. So
I'm still hoping to win 2 out of the 5 games I play in a tournament, Clem. That's still my goal.
I think I'm happy with 2 as well. Like 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. I think it's a really perfect score. And And as we said also earlier, I hope my next tournaments will not be really like this because there will be ambush games in it. So well, you can still win or lose ambush games, but you see what I mean. Like
very much so.
I would approach it a bit differently.
Nice. So I think so the Big Red Book. So it is something like 290 pages, and we have gone over it very quickly. As Clem said earlier, we're really not the guys to come to for hot meta analysis. It's just not how we're programmed. Even if we did have the time to literally look in and check all the changes, but I think what we can say is the Big Red Book is I would call it a triumph, Clem. To be honest, I really like what they've done with it.
Yeah, I'm entirely happy with it. Like I don't know what else I would want in it. To be honest,
the only thing I would want is I just want them to codify doubles games rules, and that is literally it.
Right.
That's literally it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said 10 millimeters, but I don't even expect that to be in the book. It could be a PDF somewhere on the website. I would be completely happy, or like a blog article even, not a PDF, like a blog article. Hey, we've come to attention, like people. Anyway, to get back on the book, I think it's just exactly what we wanted, and I'm glad they just keep doing a great work, and I'm thankful for it in a way, right? Like, what else can I be asking for as a customer? That they just do exactly what I want them to do. So
I mean, Clem, if you think back to, I think we've even had 2 topics of the month so far. We've only 7 episodes in, and we've had 2 of those topics of the month where what changes would we like to see in Kings of War, with a slightly different take on it. But a lot of those things we talked about are in this book.
Yes, I mean, for what it is, which is 3.5, however you call it, they nailed it. Obviously, it's not 4th edition, and I hope 4th edition doesn't come too soon either. And so some of the stuff we said obviously can only come for 4th edition, like changing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so for what I was hoping this book would be, it's just great. I wanted to say one more thing, is like the Clash of King 2022. I think it brought a lot of new stuff and a lot of changes, right? Like there were 2 new army lists, obviously, formations, tons of new items. Oh, I didn't review the items list, did you? Well, if item changing prices...
All I checked was that the new items from that cookbook are in there. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't check the prices or anything. Oh,
I had a quick look. Yeah.
We suck at reviews. What can I say? But my point was 2022 really brought almost too many things, right? I mean, I remember I had the impression that that's borderline overwhelming, new things everywhere. And this book doesn't feel like that. It feels more like a comforting. Okay, this is the game you know and love, and we've fixed a few things here and there and made it better overall, but it's still the same thing, just slightly incrementally better. And just perfect. One
thing we need to say is the game is fantastic. Like, because we're always complaining about things, right? But actually, and you touched on it earlier, Clem, is like, we're not the most competitive players, but having said that, the game is already pretty balanced. Yeah, there are some weird edge cases, we know that, at tournaments, but that doesn't ever really impact me so much. It's like me playing with you or something like that, where neither of us are going to try and exploit these things, and they are pretty rare edge cases. So the game is great. I think this is a really fantastic product, a great clear up of the rules. The new stuff in there, the new ways to play is super exciting. For me, that's the most exciting thing, to be quite honest.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited about all 4 of these new ways to play. It's really, really cool.
Yes.
And honestly, I can wholly, genuinely recommend buying this book. I'll almost certainly get a paper copy of it. We do have a copy, but I like to have a paper book in front of me.
Yeah, I'll probably get my own PDF because I'm kind of like, like the one we have as like review with a typo in it in the background.
Yeah, I noticed that too, right?
It kind of annoys me. It's like, good job, like you kind of poked me to also buy the PDF even if I already got it for free because I want this gun. Anyway.
Do you know I did that with the Firefight rulebook as well, because I had the hard copy, the paper copy anyway, because I bought the starter box, but the PDF I had a watermark for Pathfinders.
Right.
And that was kind of bugging me, so at some point I just saw it. I'm paying €20 for.
Yeah, that's also the thing, right? It's not crazily expensive anyway, and so it's supporting the game you love. So it kind of feels right to just be like, okay, well, I'm thankful to have gotten it months early to have a review of it, and hopefully you guys give you some preliminary taste of what's to come. And but that I'm still happy to buy my own, both paper and PDF. I mean, paper I'll probably get it with the starter sets, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly, buddy. Exactly. Yeah. And if you're a new player, it really is a great time to be getting into Kings of War.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like this rule book really is just it's perfect. I think it's just perfect. All right, should we move on? I think we've said everything we could say about this book now.
Right? I think so, buddy. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to some more Kings of War in the near future. So that's, I think, mission accomplished for the book, for me at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you said, I think that was really interesting, Clem, or among the many interesting things you said, was just the fact that, thinking about the siege rules, you're going, oh my God, imagine if my abyssals are attacking the town. How cool that would be. And that's what you want from a new book, right? It's like to think about your collection in a new way, and it's, to get your brain firing with new and exciting stuff that just wasn't really possible before. I know there were siege rules in second edition, and we could always have kind of fudged something, but the amount of work that's gone into these siege rules is I think it's going to be a great experience. Anyway, we're going in circles, but that's awesome. All right.
So, what happened in the Warpath universe for us in the past, since the last episode?
Warpath Firefight. Let's talk about hobby stuff first. So, I am... Well, right here I've made a start on my Asterians, but by this point I'm very much into my Asterians. I'm painting them to look like the Decepticons, who are the bad guys in Transformers, just because I think that's super, super cool.
Super cool scheme. Yeah, I love what you've done with them.
It's so simple, but yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, they're fun to paint. The Asterians, the great quality of life improvement I've made for myself is getting plastic glue instead of super glue, and that makes a huge difference.
Oh yeah, I always use plastic glue anyway.
So building them was a pain, but painting them was a joy. They're so good to paint. But now, actually, with plastic glue, they're totally fine to build. So that's great. So I'll be making even faster progress with them in the coming days. One of my Spectres, I painted it for... So I've got 2 Spectres already painted up. One was already in my kind of Decepticons theme. But the other one is kind of like bright pink.
The Spectres is the huge guy, right? Like the one when you look at the picture, he's like, oh, it looks like a nice model, and then you get an infantry model next to it to get an idea of the sky. It's like, oh, right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
pretty
big,
you. Yeah.
Pretty big ones. Exactly.
Nice models.
And I had one, so I got them for Deadzone, but obviously now I'm doing a Firefight army. They're just going to nest in that perfectly. But one of them I did bright pink, just because I wanted to paint a bright pink robot, as you do. But
Why not?
I'm kind of thinking now to myself, well, most of the, as you know, Clem, most of the Asterian stuff is remotely piloted, like robots and things like that. So
That I know. That little I know about the fluff. Yes.
Yeah, so there's like an Asterian elf sitting in a warehouse somewhere, on a different
In an
planet,
office, like downtown.
drinking their coffee, firing the lasers.
Right.
My robot got killed. Oh well, I'm taking my break now. Which actually I really think is cool. But so the Spectre giant stompy robots, they're still like that. But the elves have to be kind of hooked up with their brains or whatever to the robot in a much more sort of invasive way. And if the robot gets killed, they also die,
All right. Mm-hmm.
Wow, really ramping up the, So if you want that promotion at work, you're like, well, I do, but I really don't want to possibly die at work,
I had colleagues like that in the
coffee on me
past.
last week. Yeah, exactly. But I was thinking kind of maybe one of the perks for being a Spectre pilot is obviously these guys are the most Top Gun, Tom Cruise, they're the elite, so they're going to get treated differently. So I kind of felt like, well, of course they're going to have their Spectres painted however they want if they've been a Top Gun ace Spectre pilot for a little while. So my one that's bright pink and is obviously a very high achiever, and he's like, sorry, I'm having a pink robot, I don't care. Or she, maybe it's let's go with that. It's a she, and she, that's it.
I mean, pink doesn't have to be female,
that.
but yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I see. I love the backstory for your robot. It's going to make it so much more interesting when I actually kill it on the table.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And I painted up my proxy bomb bots, which look totally fine.
Yeah, you've posted pictures of them on our Facebook group. I think I've seen something that looked like, that must be the bomb bots.
Exactly, buddy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think I've done about 4 of them, but they look totally fine, 3D printed.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool ones.
And then I was thinking about doing some glazing, which is a technique I don't often do with painting. And then I realised I probably about 4 years ago ran out of Lamian medium, which is basically it's a GW technical paint. It's basically paint without any pigments in it, so it's kind of like blank paint, if that makes sense.
It's the medium.
Right?
It's just a medium to carry the pigments, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly, right. So basically what you do is you then add in a colour, some pigments of whatever colour you want, and then use that as to glaze or whatever you want to do with it. But I was looking up how much Lamian medium costs for a tiny little pot, and it's like pushing €8, and I was like, my God, that's a lot of money.
Right.
What is actually in this? What is it like? So ended up going down a bit of a rabbit hole of just literally googling homemade Lamian medium.
So you played chemist.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And it's, to be honest, it's really, really simple to make something very, very similar. I'll probably put the video in the show notes. But yeah, and I've forgotten the exact name of it, but I got a big bottle of this stuff. That was, I don't know, €20, but for a massive bottle. So, not cheap, but still. And then you basically mix that 50-50 with distilled water, which is not expensive. And you put a little, mixed them up in a dropper bottle, put in a little metal ball bearing to make it mix nicely. And to be honest, that seems to have done the trick really, really well. So then I just mix in a little bit of purple or a little bit of orange or whatever it is I want. And you've got really nice glaze. So I then went back and glazed my Marauders, my Asterians, and my Forge Fathers.
Interesting.
With,
it's just everyone...
Yeah, but it's super quick, even though that's a lot of models. It's quick and it's fun. So, any big surface areas of like metal or whatever on the tanks, just like give it a little, or shoulder pads.
Yeah,
give it a little glaze.
That's I think the only glazing that I've reasonably done, like in a bit of volume, is something similar for Necrons. Like the robots from 40K. like you basically prime them black, dry brush metal, like a metallic color everywhere, and then you apply. I use contrast paints then to do the glazing, because contrast paints can also do some glazing. Like some of them are lighter than the others. Like some are very opaque, some of them are super light, and so you can also use the Lamian medium or like a clone that you build. That you mix yourself to make it a bit thinner or like not so opaque, and then it's nice to add a tint to models. And it's again like a super fancy term, like but glazing, blah blah blah. But you can do a very quick job and just change the tint a little bit with a layer of glazing. It's just traditional glazing is like you have extremely translucent paint and you apply 50 layers of it to really make the craziest blends ever, like when you paint for a Golden Demon or like a similar painting competition. But even for us, like grunt painters that paint full armies, you can do stuff that works. And mixing your own, I've done it for shades. When I built a bunch of terrain, I wanted to use like Agrax Earth shade, or what is like, it's the brown shade from GW, right? Mm-hmm. And I basically went through a bit more than half a part of that for one small building, and then I looked at what else did I have to paint, and I did the math, and I was like, maybe I can make something almost as good for not that much. And it turns out, yes, it works. I wouldn't use that for models, maybe. Like my shade wasn't as good, like the consistency wasn't so good. In a way, it was really good enough for buildings. But
do you remember what you put in it, Clem?
No, I have no idea. I mean, I think it was, what's his name, Luke's APS, who has a video about it.
Right.
I think that's what I followed. I went to my arts and crafts supply shop, like Modular. It's an amazing shop, dangerous place because I always leave a lot of money whenever I go there. And bought some acrylic medium and some whatever, and mixed it and dropped models, and it worked. It's just when you paint models, at least for me, consistency in colors and so on is pretty important. And so my Agrax Earth shade did not get exactly the same brown as the official one. And so if half of the models in an army are painted with Agrax Earth shade, then I don't want to use my clone for the other half, because it will not look consistent, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
And so, like, it had pretty similar properties and it's good and everything. So if you do everything with that clone, then it works. But it's just, I ended up putting it just for my buildings, and it was fine. So what else did you do for Firefight?
So I've been printing, and this I think probably was a terrible idea, but I'm doing it now and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm 3D printing this. I got STLs for this kind of rock canyon set.
All right, I remember pictures of those guys. Yeah, they look really nice. They must take forever to print as well.
They take forever to print, like 3 or 4 days per bit. And the other thing, Clem, is like they are absolute solid plastic. So I'm paying like €25 for one.
Really? Oh, you need to change. You can change that right in your slicer. You can tell it adjust the infill. Especially for models like this.
I could do all these things, Clem, but this is how I've done it. So it's costing me an absolute fortune to print this stuff, but I'm really enjoying it, and I'm nearly there. So I'm down to the last. It's like a 4-piece rock that all fits together to make like this kind of canyon hill thing. It's going to take like 2 weeks or something to print, and is it using a lot of plastic, but I'm enjoying it, and I'm nearly there, Clem.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it in the flesh, in the plastic flesh, let's say, end of October for our campaign weekend.
Me too,
but next time you print big terrain like this, you can adjust the infill setting somewhere in the slicer. And I think for some of those pieces, Anyway, we can discuss technical
That
stuff.
definitely would have been a good idea. It would have. I
Yeah.
think doing that would have saved me literally €100 or something. Yeah.
I mean, it has to squeeze less plastic out, so obviously you pay less for plastic. Also, it goes faster.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
A little bit. Anyway, we
Yeah,
can have a discussion.
I don't know whether, and I appreciate this is not the 3D printing section. I've got an Anycubic Viper, which I'm very happy with overall. But like literally 3 times now, I get this error message that there's either something wrong with the sensor or the filament is empty. So there's something wrong with the filament sensor. Anycubic are as good as gold. They, I send them an email, they send me another sensor. But it's literally, we're on like the 3rd time now that the sensor's gone bad and I've had to order another one. They send it for free, but I don't know whether it is a weakness with the model. Because other than that, I'm really, really happy with my printer, but that is kind of annoying. So it does keep stopping at the moment until I get the new sensor through. That is kind of a pain.
Let's have a look when I come and visit. But I guess maybe there is a weakness somewhere, like they just send replacements and that's it. That's how you solve it. And I don't know. Those machines they've come a long way. I remember 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago even, like the DIY machines, like it was crazy. It was a fun hobby project to build the machine, right? And like you were trying to build print a cube, like sort of to specs, and it never worked, and it was a catastrophe. And now you can buy a machine that out of the box basically prints properly, sort of, like not all of them, but I mean it's amazing what they can do. And resin printers, oh my god, it's just like Anyway,
that's
we're digressing again.
And I will just we've digressed now, so we're in it, Clem. It's our podcast, damn it. We can do what we like.
Right, own it.
But that's a point we talked about previously, where the first 3D printer I got was a cheap one because I was like, well, I might not like it. That was such a mistake because the amount of manual, just getting the print bed just right. I literally with this one, it's got an auto setting. You just literally don't have to worry about it. And honestly, it's hours and hours and hours. I was painstakingly, and you know me, that doesn't quite suit my personality, painstakingly making tiny adjustments for 40 minutes before I printed anything. And now, no, I don't have to do any of that stuff. So it's cool. It's cool. I just wish I didn't have this weird sensor problem. But
Makes
what
sense.
about you, Clem? What? And sadly, I haven't played any games of anything in the last month, tragically. But So Firefight
is what we're talking about now, right?
Firefight.
So there's still the slow grow, like Blackjack Legacy slow grow. That was kind of like, why not join? Because I have a GCPS army to build anyway. I signed up for doing demos last weekend. Actually, yesterday. What day is it today? I'm lost. It's a 3-day weekend in Germany, and now I'm lost. Anyway, this Saturday, I played some demo games with the club. So what we do is every 2 months or so, we book the tables in our local friendly gaming shop, Battlefield Berlin, and we organize demos for several systems. This is basically volunteer based among the people in the club. And I just signed up for doing Firefight demos because I wanted to get more people involved with it, and that's one good way to achieve that. My plan was to play GCPS versus Plague, and as you know, I had some GCPS in boxes, but not assembled and even less painted, and so that's what I've done the past couple of weeks. I basically built a list for GCPS, like for 750 points for the demo. And I really had no idea what I was doing when I built the list. And I think it kind of shows in how the list is built. But, that's a starting point. And I thought, you know what, I want to play with my new army like GCPS, and the people attending the demo will play with the Plague, which I think I made a pretty good list for it. And then they're going to kick my butt, and that's perfect for demos. So anyway, I just went on with it and was like, the list sucks, but it's fine. I'm going to learn how it works or doesn't work, and that's fine. And I painted about like the 750 points literally in the past week. Again, primed black and then it's all white with the airbrush, and then contrast paint, like 2 shades of green, the same shades I'm using for my plague, some flesh, some black for the boots and weapons, basic stuff for basing, and boom, the models are done. Like, to get them to tabletop ready, it's good enough. I'll go back probably and do some, like the helmets that they have. They're like integrated visors and so on. So maybe I'll paint a few lenses and stuff like this to make them a bit more evolved. But they already look really nice. I mean, I'm so happy with literally like 3 evenings worth of painting work, and I have a painted army. How cool is that? Like, thank God for speed paints, like contrast and so on.
It's super cool. And the other thing I'd say is, I mean, obviously you were helped by the fact you knew what you were doing because you were basing them off your plague army, right? But
yes.
I think it's just going to look so cool with them up next to your plague. You know, just
definitely does.
So cool.
Yeah, I think that's really what motivated me, because initially I thought, okay, so plague, because just like them, and why not just go for it. And then what's my second army? And initially I thought marauders, because I love orcs in general. And in the end I went for GCPS because I think the playstyle will be quite a challenge for me, because they just don't play the way my brain works. Like, they're a shooty, like you really need to organize stuff well. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But also I thought, how cool is it that next to my plague, that they really are a cohesive force. Like, it's really like, in my mind at least, the GCPS is like the not yet eaten by the plague people, right? Like, and all the plague are like, come and join us, and like go and eat brains and stuff. I don't know, it just makes me giggle. It's like, I like it.
I think of it as like, this isn't a battle, this is like the last stand of the survivors.
Right.
You know, that's what's happening in my brain, which is a totally different thing, which is super exciting. I love it.
Yeah, for me it really adds something on top of it, and so that part was really nice. And so for the demos, so the way we do it is we do 3 games in the day. So we have 3 2-hour slots in the day, and people book it in advance. So the first guy sent me a message the day before, I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I'll stay home tomorrow. He's like, oh great, I'll sleep in Saturday morning. Thanks.
But he sent that message at 1 a.m. or something, right? Which makes leads me to believe. I'm not a cynical person, but I would very much assume he's got in from the pub, feels a little bit worse for wear, and thinks, do I just clear my diary for tomorrow and lie in bed and feel sorry for myself? That's what I do.
Yeah, it was great. It's, I mean, he's a free man, right? As long as he's, I support that, to be honest. As long as he sent me a message reasonably well in advance, like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna make it, then it's fine. I'm happy with it. Like,
he hasn't left you in the shop for 2 hours on your own.
Yeah. Especially, you know how much I love mornings. And so given the ability to sleep in on a Saturday morning, I mean, 1 a.m. was the middle of the afternoon for me, right? No, I'm joking. But anyway, so first guy didn't show up. And then the 2 other demo people, they did not follow my plan. Because both of them are already interested in Firefight, and both of them already kind of think, oh, I'm going to build a GCPS army. And so they wanted to play GCPS, which they did. So first of all, I realized I forgot one model, which is really bad. I had a Strider in the GCPS list. And it's not even just that I forgot to bring it along, I did not even paint it. Like, I had completely forgot about him.
Oh no!
Yeah, just it's home. Like, I left it home, but I didn't even paint it. And so I just adjusted the list on the spot, like I removed an aberration from the plague. And it's about the same cost as the Strider. But it also kind of messed up the balance even further in favor of the plague. Because then, well, they did have some heavy weapon teams and stuff like that, but not that many tools to deal with the Plague Lord from the Plague list. And also, obviously, I knew a little bit more what I was doing with playing the Plague. And also, I was playing with not entire beginners of the system. Like, they sort of knew the rules a little bit already, and their experienced wargamers, both of them. So I failed at doing a demo where you lose your game when you play a demo out of courtesy for the person who's coming to check the game. I didn't smash their faces to the ground. Like, it was still we played till round 4 or 5 both times, and it was fun. But I thought I would play GCPS, and I didn't. But now I see a bit more, I think, how to build a GCPS list. I think I really know now what I want to do with the Plague. And Plague is just a delivery system for monsters. Literally. I think the zombies are completely useless, and they just clog the opponents, and every shot that you put on the zombies is a shot wasted, because you should have shot the monsters instead. And the Plague Lord just murdered anything he touched, instantly. It's just crazy. It's probably even worse at a low level points. A low point level, to have a strong model like a Plague Lord. But yeah, it was just very, very strong. And overall, again, super, super happy with Firefight. It just plays just right. I love the command dice mechanism. The terrain interaction is great. And we had a great time with the demos. And so now I think I want to paint the Strider and paint a few more models to take them to 1,000 points, and so that I can bring them to our gaming weekend end of October. And that's about it for my Firefight fun for this since the last episode.
Just very briefly, buddy, so you talked about sort of some changes you might want to make to your GCPS.
Yes.
Could you touch on that briefly, of the kind of things that you might do?
Right, so I think I understand a bit better what the various entries in the list can do or are supposed to do. And again, I'm probably wrong about it, right? But I think the recruits, they're sort of like the zombies in a way. Meaning you can get a lot of bodies for not that much points. You need to 15 or recruits or something, which is what I had in the list. 15 recruits plus the leader. And even with a big guy, it takes quite an effort to remove them from the table. They won't shoot so much, or they won't do too much damage on their own, but they are foots on the ground, and they will, score points and stuff like this. And so I think, recruits, I would see them more as like the zombies, to keep the opponents busy. Will they waste shots and offensive power against those units that have a lot of grind, right?
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, I think a lot plays around the assault reaction, because one thing that's pretty hard with GCPS is their gun, the standard laser rifle, whatever it's called. It's 18 inches in range. And 18 inches is nothing. Plague charges 12 inches.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so if you want to get in shooting range, it means you're going to get charged almost next turn or something. Right? It's not like you
exactly.
You sit at the back of the table, and
you've got 4 turns of shooting at that aberration until it gets you. Yeah.
And you do a gun line, and it's come at me, bro, I don't give a shit. Just walk forward, I'm going to thin your lines. No, you need to get in there so that you can actually shoot. But the thing is, most of the GCPS infantry units have either suppressive fire or controlled fire assault reactions. So right. You know the way it works, right? Is whenever you are charged, if you have the special ability that lets you do an assault reaction,
and you haven't activated,
that's also very, very important on how you play stuff. then you can do your assault reaction. And so suppressive fire is basically you blaze away at the target, right? Something like this. And controlled fire is you do a normal shooting action at the target. So if you shoot on force normally, like the elite, like the veterans and stuff like this GCPS do, that means you're actually pretty good. Like you might put quite a lot of shots on the charging unit. And I think that's really, like, you really need to play around this quite well. Like, make sure that whatever is in range of being charged, like, you need to get in range to shoot, and then kind of bait the opponent. Like, if you have a melee-oriented opponent, like the Plague. Like, I'm thinking again of the scenario, how my GCPS can play against my Plague. And so I think you kind of want to bait the chargers to charge into a unit that can do an assault reaction that works. Like, so controlled fire is probably the best one. And so that means they need to be the first to move forward. They probably want to still be kind of inside a building or in defensible cover, because that's always good. Like, their armor kind of sucks in the baseline, so you kind of want to have that. And yeah, just have them shoot down the charger, like, and do some wounds that will count toward the assault results. And I think that's kind of how I want to approach it. Like,
and then have some more stuff behind them.
Yeah, and so kind of have several units like this that you can feed the charging enemy, and so they have to take that charge, or that's the only charge that they can take. So obviously they will take it. Because maybe, especially people who don't really know yet too much how the game works, or don't have that much gaming experience with it, maybe they'll think, oh yeah, I can charge 10 Marines inside a building. I mean, I'm a melee guy, they're shooty guys, I can kill them easily, right? And then you get to do your assault reaction, and then you shoot at the charging unit, and you thin the... Like, if it's a big monster, you're kind of fucked, because the big monster is very high armor, and even if you remove 3 hit points out of the 5 that the Plague Lord has, well, he will still charge you and hit you with the full strength. But if you have a charging unit with 10 guys, and before they even make it into combat, you shoot down 3 or 4 of them, then instantly it changes the melee fight that happens right after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think there's something there. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work exactly. I think it's still going to be pretty touchy to make it work in practice. But I think there is something to do with them. And I think I really like it, in the sense that it is there is a challenge. And yes, it is a shooty faction, but it's not like the shitty gunline faction, like, hey, I'm doing a castle like in my corner of the table, and I don't have to move from there. I can just destroy you from a distance, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking
exactly
about.
What you mean.
I'm not talking about Taos in 40k, but I am, right? Or like similar extremely shooty factions in 40k, where, you know what I mean? Like, you play against a shooty army, it means you're going to have a bad time, because you know they're going to do a castle somewhere. And unless
either you absolutely smash them because you can, get into melee combat quick, and that they have absolutely no chance, or you get shot off the table before you get there, and
exactly.
For one of you, it's going to be a bad time.
Exactly, like, either way, someone is winning not because of tactical skill of I placed my shooty units well and I handled the threat of charge as well, or on a different level maybe, I guess. I never really understood how that works in details, but for Firefight and for GCPS now, I think, okay, I think I see where the challenge is for the shooty part of it, and I think I know how I could make it work with against Plague in particular. And that really excited me a lot, like from the tactical perspective, really. Yeah. You know?
I'm excited listening to you talk about it. Sounds really cool.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought about them is how, there was a question how to differentiate the recruits from the Marines, from the veterans, and so on. And initially I thought, I'm going to change the gun and blah, blah, blah. but it's kind of hard to really see on the table. And what I've done in the end is the recruits have the kind of open helmets, so you see their faces, and they don't have the kind of weird backpack that is on the kits as well. I'm not sure if you've seen the sprue or if you know what I'm talking about, but so they kind of look more like they have less equipment, the recruits, and that I think kind of makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And the normal Marines do have the backpack and do have the fancy helmet and so on. But the thing is, there are also Rangers and veterans and so on. And for those guys, I wasn't too sure what I would do, and I think I'll just do a different paint scheme. That's my latest thinking. I think like I'll paint some Black Ops, like gray and black stuff, and that would be my veteran guys, like special units, special force, or something like this. I think it could also be quite cool, because then for Deadzone that could be like a separate kind of unit, or like for scenarios you could play them differently. Like kind of building in my head, okay, this is how I want to expand my GCPS, and that was also quite exciting. So yeah, a lot of stuff, and now I just want to play more. I want to play more of them and build more of them.
What you could also say, Clem, is if they're painted slightly differently, which makes everything you've said makes total sense. You could say, in the fluff, they're from a different corporation or something like that, or they're from Maison Labs, or
absolutely,
you like.
Yeah. You can use them slightly differently later, but even like in say a 1,000 point or 1,500 point army, like GCPS army, I think now I would feel okay with having like one or two squads that have a different paint scheme, like not the various shades of green that I have, but like the gray urban camo guys maybe, or like Black Ops, like black and gray, like armor and so on. And I think it would still look cool on the table and still look coherent. Like I can explain that to myself. Like there are the recruits, like the green guys, like literally, like figuratively and literally green guys, and they're kind of overwhelmed against the plague or whatever opponent they have. And then there's like the additional veteran unit that is brought to support them further, something like this. Anyway, all I'm saying is, one Saturday afternoon of playing Firefight, and I'm even more excited to play and build and paint more of that afterwards. So that's pretty cool. Super cool. Yeah. What a great game. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I just wanted to give a shout out to pod community member Peter Swift, who I think basically spontaneously, I think he was painting. So he's been out of the hobby for something like 20 years, and he on a whim picked up an Armada box set. So he was painting that, had a look for a podcast to listen to while he was doing, and happily came across our podcast, Clem.
Nice.
And then literally a month later, he went down his local friendly gaming store and was giving Deadzone demos. So he's fallen down the rabbit hole, and way to go, buddy. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's just perfect. That's I think that's exactly how to approach the hobby, and welcome on board. We're glad to have you. Yep.
Yeah, we certainly are. And Clem, the world holds its breath. Have you painted your Deadzone terrain?
What's your guess?
Well, I know the answer, but I just want to give you a hard time on the podcast.
I choose not to.
Choose not to answer.
No, I chose not to paint it. No, so, I mean, if you look at the Facebook group from the podcast, I've posted a bunch of pictures from the demo day. By the way, if you want to see the GCPS and Plague next to each other and so on, that's where you can find the pictures. And also there's a bunch of Mantic terrain, like from the FLGS, and it just looks awesome. And every time I see it, I'm like, dude, why don't you just paint yours? It's just put some white and gray on top of it and a few accent colors, and boom, it's done, and it just looks great, and move on. And so I've in my head, I've done one more step toward having them painted. In practice, I haven't. Are you satisfied?
Quite satisfied, yes. Yeah, I think the Battlefield Berlin, the way they've got the Deadzone terrain and Firefight terrain painted, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
I think I'm going to the stuff I've painted already. I'm going to try, and it's a technique I've not done before. I'm going to try and do something called an oil wash. Because I'm not that happy with how it looks now. And I meant to do an oil wash this weekend, but I think I've bought the wrong stuff somehow.
That's too bad.
Yeah, something weird happened when I tried to mix oil with some white spirit. So maybe I've done something wrong. It's definitely my fault.
Are you sure you need to mix it? No, I think you don't mix it, right? It's not like water, like acrylics, like in acrylics paint you put water, but I think with oil paint you definitely don't use white spirit. It's only to clean it. And so if you want to thin the paint, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I will check the YouTube video. I definitely did something wrong, so I will check the YouTube video again and hopefully have an update next time, dear listener.
Nice.
But it's cool, like trying new painting techniques, which is not something I normally get stuck in my ways. The same with cooking and things. Like I tend to have 5 or 6 go-tos that I'm happy with, and I just tend to do them again and again and again.
That's
so it's
how it
cool.
works.
Just trying new things. Just trying crazy new things with painting is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So I don't think we really have anything to say for Deadzone this month, Clement.
I don't think so. I mean, the only thing I have in mind is, as I mentioned, is more coming from Firefight. Like developing my GCPS Firefight army kind of makes me think more about, I could also use that in Deadzone later, and that will be so cool. And I think it's also part of maturing the scenarios and the fluff in preparation for our gaming weekend, end of October. Because there will be a lot of Deadzone then, right? So it's kind of more in anticipation, in preparation. Nothing too concrete or factual to talk about today about it, but next time definitely.
But really exciting, really, really exciting, amazing, cool. Cool. So I'll just mention quickly then. So Kings of War Champions, which is the bootleg game I'm kind of working on, or not, because I don't have enough time. The only thing I have done is I have made a legitimate board. It looks terrible with I've literally got a ruler and a paintbrush and gone whoop, whoop, whoop and drawn the squares, but it works.
Nice.
And then the only other thing I've done is I got my Northern Alliance, my Riftforge Orcs, and was kind of like moving them around going, this looks really cool. And I was thinking it would be cool if there was like a thrown weapon special rule. So like if you've got a throwing spear or a throwing axe, if you're charging a cube, before you actually make the charge, your guy can basically throw the spear and then charge, so you almost get like a free little attack, which I think would be really cool. And that's literally all I've done on that. So, basically the game is nearly finished, Clement.
Perfect, yeah, it's great.
This stuff writes itself.
I think that's also very historically accurate, isn't it? I think that...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like, Viking or whatever, or a Roman. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Romans as well. Like the what's it called? Like the spear they have or something. It's actually, when they charge, they throw it, and so it kind of stabilizes the opponent, and then they can...
exactly.
kick their asses or something like that. So
it was super clever as well, because the spear, the tip of the spear was, I think, made of a very bendy metal, so they couldn't throw it back. Like basically, you throw it once and then it's useless, which is really smart, right?
Nice, yeah. By design.
But that's basically as far as I've got. So Clem, very quickly then, because as always we're pushed for time. Our Slow Grow Salamanders project. How are you getting on?
So I spent quite some time to figure out what I wanted to do for my bases, I think, since the last episode. And I ended up going for lava after you convinced me from Dino Monster Land or Island or whatever.
Yes.
Like they are fire based and so on. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I mean, lava bases are cool for a reason, right? Like they look awesome and so on. And so I basically built my modular lava bases for the Salamanders. I also built all of my fire stuff, so like the Scorch Wings, the Fire Elementals, the Phoenix. What else do I have? The Greater Fire Elemental, all that stuff is built. And then I realized, I signed up to do Firefight demos, and I have 0 GCPS models at all, like not even assembled. and so I spent time doing that instead. So yeah, I literally have assembled 0 lizard so far. So that's next on my to-do list. And yeah, I think I modified the list a little bit. Like I have a version 0.2 now that I still have not played on the UB2. No, not yet. Just too busy doing other stuff in life. So maybe I should do that at some point, but hasn't happened yet. And yeah.
I feel like having a test game before our big battle though is like cheating, you know?
You say that just but you're probably right.
Throw it out there now casually. I won't have played a game with them before our battle this month.
You're
Clem.
probably right. No, I mean this. I'll think about it. That's an interesting perspective to say. You know what? I built an army from 0 to 60. Never played a single game with any of them. It's just go with it and just see how it goes, like how bad it goes. That's it could be an interesting concept.
You're describing literally every army I've ever done.
I know, but yeah. So I think yeah. We'll see how that one goes. I mean, it's still. I'll see how busy I will be between now and what is it, 20th of October or something.
Yeah. We got about 3 weeks, I think, buddy.
Yeah, if I come up with something I'm happy with to paint the lizard, I think it's gonna be easy peasy. But if I'm not happy with the lizard, then I'm in trouble. And but I'll see. I think I'm still on track. I mean, I know
Once
you're done with it,
you'll
right?
go fast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fire is always fun and easy to paint. I like painting fire because you know what to do and it looks awesome and it's easy.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and you're basically done with your salamanders, right? And
pretty much. Yeah. So I've got one of the list I've got now. I've got one large infantry base to make because I've just run out of them. So.
Oh yeah, I know someone who can do something for you in the.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Should put something in the mail.
Our mutual friend.
Yeah, our mutual friend.
And other than that, I've got 2 regiments of the actual salamanders to do. They're not in the list anymore, but I've got them built and primed.
Right.
I was using the resin add-ons, but just gluing them on I found miserable, so I kind of gave up on that, and I was like, sod it, I'm just doing the plastic.
The resin add-ons are for like ceremonial guards?
Ceremonial guard, yeah.
And what, unblooded or something? No, what else?
Yeah, I don't know. I know it was ceremonial guard, but to be honest, I'm just, it's my life. I'm just going to use the system I've adopted. Is I've glued like big shields onto bases. And I'm going to use that to show which is which, because they all look very similar anyway, to be quite honest. So I've just decided to do that because why not?
And then make tons of money by selling the resin bits back on eBay or something.
Quite possibly.
Right.
But yeah, so now I think we're doing pretty well on that. I think, as you said, Clem, like when it clicks with you, you'll suddenly go really, really fast, even though it seems like you haven't done much so far. You'll suddenly just fly with it.
Yeah, cool. That's how I am. So what else are you... Yeah, so what's your next step for the salamanders? Like, do you have anything else in mind for... Where would that take you next?
For the army, I think, to be honest, once I've done... So I'll have about 3,000 points, just under 3,000 points, all completely done. At that point, I think the project will sit there. I'm working on the Asterians now. Probably the next army I do will probably be Plague for Firefight, I imagine, because I'm really looking forward to doing that.
Yeah.
And then probably the next Kings of War thing I do. I do still have a few bits and pieces for my Rift Forge Orcs I need to finish up.
Right.
But probably my next big project will be the Plague, and then Kings of War wise, it will probably be when the Twilight Kin come out, to be honest.
Okay, so our next slow grow is Twilight King whenever they come out. Is that what you're saying?
I think so, buddy. Yeah, to be honest, yeah.
I mean, that's a deal. That sounds good. Yeah, I think the salamanders. Obviously, I wanna paint the stuff that I have and like build an actual playable army, and play games with them. Obviously, as much as I can. And I think I'm tempted to also make a 10mm version of it. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that because I thought about bringing a 10mm version of it end of October just to force you to also make it.
That would have been so funny, though, if you turned up with your army in the wrong scale. That would have been extremely funny.
I know, I'll bring the 28mm stuff, but I think I will bring also 10mm stuff for you to actually give it a try. Like,
we both know if I try it, I will very quickly be doing it. It's just a question of trapping me into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I'm just fair warning. Like one of your surprise birthday gifts is 10mm your Salamanders list. Yeah, I need you to send me your list, by the way, so that I know exactly.
Seriously?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, that's so kind of you, buddy.
Yeah, it's kind of to strong arm you. It's to strong arm you into 10mm Kings of War, but I'm sure you're gonna love it.
Oh no! Obviously, there's loads of strings attached, but that's still super cool. Yeah, of course I'll love it. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing, buddy. Thank you so much.
So I think that's about it for our slow grow. So next one is Twilight King, and we also have the same slow grow for 10mm. So yeah,
that actually sounds really cool.
You kind of beat me. Yeah, you beat me to it for 28mm. Like you literally finished painting yours before I actually painted or even primed a single model of mine.
Well, I think you've painted one base, and I've got one base to paint. I think that's
about it. No, it's a test model. I know you don't believe in test models, but it was a test base, and I've thrown it away because I was not happy with it. So,
oh no!
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm back to 0 now. Yeah. So that's
okay.
That's a win, I think, for the first stage. Let's see if I can catch up for the 10mm, and and then Twilight King, and I think that's it for our slow grow. I mean, the other thing is we could do slow grow for Firefight or something else. Let's think about that. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe we do that next with. You could do your Marauders and I could do my Plague when we get to that point. But yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I kind of like like doing slow grow our way, which is not slow, but like,
it's cool. Yeah, it's fun.
I like it. I like it, and
I like doing it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's fun things ahead.
So, should we move on to Pannilore?
Yes. So I have to make a confession. I did not take time to read whatever we agreed that we would read. So I will just listen to you BS me about there's no islands.
And then the dinosaur says to the giant spider, hey.
Right. But go ahead.
No worries. So I read the lore in the Deadzone rulebook, the core lore stuff, and I read the lore for the Forge Fathers in the Firefight book. I said I would also read the Twilight Kin lore, but I forgot to do that. So, lore in the Deadzone rule book is, very much as we would expect. You know, it's very, very obviously very, very similar to the stuff in the Firefight book, as you'd imagine. One thing I thought was kind of interesting was it mentions that Earth has been destroyed, which I thought was actually quite interesting. And it's I think that's probably quite a smart decision to make if you're making a new sci-fi world, because I think it would be, if you want a clean break from the world as it is today, just saying the Earth is gone, is probably quite a smart way to do that, right? Because otherwise you're dealing with lots of legacy things that you don't necessarily want to deal with.
Right. And then you get into, too close to history, right? And say, which one of the nations actually won the last World War? It's like, nope, didn't happen. It's gone now. It's everyone forgot about it, and we have a new clean slate to work from. That's okay. Good to know.
Yeah, which is cool. It goes on quite a bit about the Mandrake Rebellion, which I must admit I don't find as interesting as the Plague stuff. But there's loads of stuff in there about the Plague. It explains sort of how the Plague actually seems quite selective. So, when it's, let's say, for example, a Plague Lord is just a normal dude one day, and then the Plague, seeps out of an ancient artifact, and it's like it targets specific people. We don't really know why. I think Mantic are leaving it deliberately very vague, but I think that's really, really cool. So that maybe there's someone who's a psychopath or something, or has special skills, and it deliberately infects, for example, like Strider pilots, for example, deliberately infects,
so there's kind of a sentient...
spaceship pilots.
Is that, like, there's a sentient aspect of the plague, or...
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there seems to be a sentient aspect to it. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think that sounds pretty cool. The Forge Father's lore is just as silly as you would expect it to be. So,
in what way?
The beginning of the universe was, the Big Bang, in effect. That was the Forge Father's god creating everything, and therefore the Forge Fathers think they own everything because their god made it. So
Interesting.
That their whole thing is just going around, melting down planets for their resources because everything belongs to them.
Nice.
So that's actually quite a terrifying, genocidal,
psychopathic.
Yeah, exactly. So they need to be honest, we need to be stopped sooner rather than later, because they're just destroying suns. They're mining stars. They're destroying planets. They're just breaking everything down to dust and taking it with them, basically.
Interesting.
There was a quite cool story, but it was probably a bit overly long, about the Forge Star, the fate of the Forge Star, which is weird because the fate of the Forge Star box I've got was Forge Fathers and Marauders, but this story is basically Forge Fathers, and they don't realise how big a problem they have with the Veermen, and the Veermen come out and eat everybody, kind of thing. So I thought that was a bit weird. Maybe I'm getting that wrong somehow, but it was okay. It was okay. The best stuff in there is definitely the plague stuff, but the Forge Fathers. They live quite a long time, so they become, master artificers, or, they really have enough time to really hone their craft and become masters at building stuff, So although the Forge Father's style, things look very kind of blocky, underneath that they are unbelievably sophisticated. And,
right.
they're kind of semi-secretly selling tech to the Council of Seven. They're basically the ones who make all the Enforcers kit.
Right. But so, just wait a second. So there are different species, right? They're not human.
Yes.
They're humanoids, but different species. But how big are they? Like, in the sense, like, do they have like 3 planets? Or like 30 systems, or do they only live in spaceships and they just pillage while going around the it's
called the Star Empire or the Star Realm or something like that. So they have like the Asterians. They have their bit of space where they have quite a few planets that are settled, and then they just basically go around in these massive spaceships. Mining other planets and stuff, and just basically stripping them for resources. So presumably around the Forge Fathers' home planets is a load of like just completely dead space, because the Forge Fathers, like some kind of psychotic beaver, has just destroyed everything.
Right. So they're not really expanding throughout the universe, like they have their home world, but they go around and they just suck up all of the resources from those.
Exactly. So I think their whole religion means that their destiny is to basically just end all existence. Mm-hmm. That seems to be which is very weird, but that seems to be their thing. But the Council of Seven and the GCPS are actually, they really don't want to mess with the Forge Fathers because they're really scary. And obviously they've got the deals to get Enforcers gear and all the rest of it. So I think the GCPS doesn't, although obviously it's not one unified thing, really doesn't want to mess with the Forge Fathers anytime soon. But the GCPS is many times bigger than any of the other galactic empires. Okay. So compared to the GCPS... But the Forge Fathers and the Asterians are actually pretty small fry. They're very powerful, but they're much smaller.
And so, what is in it for the Forge Fathers when they do a trade deal with the GCPS, right? Like if you said they have the advanced tech, and they kind of like all live on their own, and they don't really. I guess you don't see Forge Fathers on GCPS colonies or something. Like it's not like a.
No, you don't. No. So, although having said that, for example, in the Star Saga board game, one of the characters was a artificer, I think. But yeah, they don't tend to mix. I don't think, I might be wrong on that, but I don't think so. But so there are some Forge Fathers who aren't happy with the idea of selling tech to the aliens, to the humans. But they're getting tons of stuff, right? So I guess the Council of Seven know what the Forge Fathers like, and then maybe they're allowing them to, open hand to mine planets, or they're giving them tons of money or wealth or whatever it is that space dwarves like. They're getting tons of whatever it is they like.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out a bit like how friendly or not friendly they would be toward GCPS, for example, like the other factions. I can understand a bit what makes them tick to figure out how they would, place themselves in relationship to other factions, but okay.
So I think for my Forge Fathers, I'm kind of imagining that they are part of like a long range. So basically, they might have one big home ship, like mining ship, and then maybe a small fleet of other ships too, like support ships and fighters and stuff. And I'm kind of imagining that they're just on a long-term kind of mining / they're almost on a like the Starship Enterprise, except with more mining and more dwarves. They're off to kind of explore / mine things, and they've been away for a long time. I think is kind of what I'm imagining.
Right, I see what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. Now I kind of want to also check the what's it called, like the Mandrake Rebellion. Yeah, I'm curious to read a bit about it. And I think my takeaway also from the Firefight and like the Warpath fluff is a lot of it is kind of like open-ended, and it's kind of like, okay, we've done some basic work there, and then it's up to you guys to kind of build more on top of it. I don't know. I mean, I think I mentioned to you like messaging. I listened to the Counter Charge podcast about like narrative stuff and fluff and so on with authors. I think it was more Kings of War authors stuff, but maybe I didn't follow up everything. Oh no, they also mentioned Warpath stuff. But anyway, so kind of gave me the impression, oh yeah, it's quite open. Like if you want to write a novel about it or like come up with your own stuff, kind of feel free to do it, right? I mean, we already knew, well, it's your game. If you want to tell the story differently, just do it. But I think it goes a bit further than that. It's there's a lot of open-ended aspects to it, and in a way, I think it's interesting, right? Like, it means we can kind of cherry pick which parts we like or which parts are inspiring to us. Like you mentioned, like the Plague. I think we both love the Plague stuff and how it interacts with the crazy galactic capitalistic empire, and kind of twist history of mankind around, and just go from there and build on top of it. I think that's pretty cool stuff to do. So
definitely. And in my mind, I don't know whether you agree with me, Clem, but I think this is the last days of the GCPS. I think it'll take a long time, but in my mind, I think it's kind of at its zenith now, and it's the seeds for its downfall are already sown. Whether it's I don't think they're going to defeat the Plague. I mean, it talks in the book about obviously dead zones and containment protocols and how they're doing research into how they can beat it, either by controlling it, a la Maison, the kind of stuff Maison Labs does. But I always think back to the abandoned worlds that we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But I think that the humans are really smart and sneaky and very inventive, and often at their best at times of of dire need. But yeah, I kind of feel like the GC, in a few more millennia, there'll be another species approaching the Asterians and going, all these worlds are abandoned. What happened there? And the Asterians are like, don't worry about it, buddy, but don't go near the
there.
Death Ark. Yeah,
it makes sense. I think that's one way to look at it. My eternal optimistic side kind of want to say, nah, the GCPS and humanity will just get over it and survive this and transcend it and do something else. And it's just kind of a narrative trick. It's so big, whatever comes after, that I can't imagine it. And so you imagine something that just ends you, in a way. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wouldn't bet against humanity post-GC, being gone after GCPS, but I don't know. It's an interesting thing, though, to kind of imagine the unimaginable, what happens after. So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting
cool.
stuff.
Yeah.
Should we move on to our next section? What is our next section, Chris?
Our next section, buddy, is listener questions, and we have an actual email.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true.
So,
do you want to read it?
Our friend of the pod, Peter Swift. Hi, guys. So, as promised, here is my question for the next podcast. You mentioned in episode 6 the possibility of having sub-factions of the GCPS, all with a different style/spin. My question falls into several parts, like all best questions do. So, 1. How many sub-factions do you envisage when thinking of this? To me, the obvious choice is 7, 1 for each council member. 2. If sub-factions were to be created, what sort of theme or flavour would you really like to see? 3. How would you go into differentiating different groups and making them distinct? And 4. Given how much you have discussed the plethora of armies in Kings of War and how you feel that number should be reduced, would creating multiple GCPS subgroups lead to a danger of the same thing in Deadzone/Firefight? I hope this makes sense and provides a few interesting points to consider. Keep up the great work, guys, and I look forward to the next episode. Cheers, Peter Swift. This message will self-destruct in 30 seconds, maybe.
Cool question. Thanks, Peter, for sending it in. And I think it's a really, really good point, really interesting thing to discuss.
Really, really interesting to discuss. Yeah, thanks, Peter.
So, where do I start? I think, for me, going from 0, or let's say 1, to 7 doesn't really make sense, right? It's not black or white. And I would say, why would you even add sub-factions, right? And
because I talked about it previously on the pod.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I support it, right? Make firefights richer and richer. And so for me, it would be about, making a few more fluff elements to give more directions to you as a player when you build your army. So maybe how you paint them, or what kind of army list you can make for it, and so on. For me, that's the reason why you would have sub-factions. And so, I don't know, maybe the current GCPS is the standard issue stuff. That's the baseline, right? When anyone in the human universe thinks of GCPS, well, that's what they think about. And then one by one, or whenever there's something needed from a new novel from the book, or a special campaign, a big narrative event next summer or something like this, you can add a special GCPS sub-faction. It's kind of based in the fluff or in something happening to the universe. And yeah, it could be coming from, again, a big narrative development in the universe, this corporation is doing something special in that planet, and therefore you get a special kind of GCPS. I don't know, maybe there's a very interesting resource that can only be found deep down under the oceans or whatever, on a water planet or something, and then you get blue GCPS because it's water, it's blue. and they have kind of a nautic theme, whatever that means, or in the rules, or like divers, or whatever it is, and or maybe the special resource that they found gives them special powers or special specific troops or specific units. And I don't know. Maybe that could be a few new resin bits to customize the existing sprue, or like a new special kind of vehicle, or special kind of weapon platform or something like this. I don't know. That could be an angle. And then what does that mean? It means you get the snow GCPS, you get the desert GCPS, you get the water GCPS, you get the urban environment GCPS, all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like I'm not sure if I like the comparison, but like Space Marine and Space Marine chapters, right?
So I was going to make that exact same comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, like Blood Angels. Why do Blood Angels exist? Well, because red is a cool color to paint your models. And so you start by painting a model red. Okay, what does red bring to your mind? Well, kind of red is blood. Yeah,
vampires.
So
Got it.
The bloody guys, and well, blood is like when you smash someone in the face in melee. So okay, maybe, well, that could be the archetype of the space, the Space Marines Blood Angels. Well, they're melee guys that like blood or whatever. Boom. That, I don't think it goes that much further. And then, of course, there are thousands and thousands of fluff and pages on top of it. But the starting point, I'm sure, is nothing more complex than this, right?
I agree with you, yeah.
And so I think it's similar for GCPS. All I want to see is not just green standard issue, like military stuff for GCPS, which is, sure, that's what they are. But I'm sure you could have, like, as I said, like desert style stuff, jungle style stuff, snow and ice themed stuff, all this kind of stuff. And for me, it's just, I definitely want to paint a yellow, like sandy color GCPS. And then I paint them like this because they're from this corporation working that subsector of the universe on those planets, and they find this kind of stuff and blah, 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 and the stories that go along with it. That's it, right? You don't need that much more. But immediately, instantly, I don't really like the green color scheme. Well, but I love the desert color scheme, and boom, I can go with this one. It's the same for Space Marines. I personally hate the ultramarine blue. I think it's an awful color, and I never want to paint any of those. I have a decent sized Blood Angels force because I love painting red. That's it, right? Doesn't go much further. I also like
it can go further, but it often doesn't. No, I mean,
no, but that's the starting point, right? Like for me at least, I think that's where it could go. And as I mentioned earlier, like from our own GCPS army, like it really made me think. Yeah, I also want to paint like black and like special ops, like black and dark gray, and maybe like bright green for the lenses, and like the stealthy elite dudes, and like, oh yeah, that sounds so cool. I want to paint a unit of those, and boom, that's it. Like that's the story. It's not even a sub faction. I agree with you. Like the way I plan to use them is for veterans, but maybe if you push the concept a bit further, then yeah, it could be like elite GCPS, or like intervention GCPS, or like a secret something GCPS, or like a secret special ops GCPS Mason Labs, or whatever, this kind of stuff. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or like the Inquisition. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. You should.
No worries, buddy. No worries, buddy. It's nice. It's you for a change. So I think you've touched on a lot of the topics, and in fact, I was going to give the Space Marines as an example. So so that's interesting. So I think the best example is the Maison Labs, because that's something we know Mantic have done, and I think they've done really well, right? So Maison Labs, I think, will be in Firefight, and obviously they're already in Deadzone.
Yes.
So
absolutely, that makes sense. Yeah, I want to see Maison Labs as the next Firefight faction. Yeah. Or the Rebs, right? Rebs are also GCPS, or sort of.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. You can do them however you want. You could do them as Renegade GCPS. You could do, there's loads of ways you could do them. But let's use Maison Labs as our example. There is interesting lore and rules reasons that Maison Labs is its own distinct thing. It has cyborgs, it has zombies, because it's doing these horrible science experiments.
Right.
So it has a reason to exist. It's got cool lore, it's a cool idea, but it has a reason to exist. So, the lazy thing to then say is, okay, well, there's another corporation that specialises in, training via min. That would be the really lazy way to go with it, which is just basically the same idea of Maison Labs. But we know Mantic tends to work that way, right? Where, whether it's Kings of War or Firefight, it'll look at the models it has and try and increase the sales of them and go, well, obviously it's an easy way to do it.
Yep.
What I'd like to see, Clem, is in the rule book or, whatever, I'd like to see basically a corporation traits table, so that you can make your own corporation, give it whatever name you want to call it, Quinson Incorporated, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And then, okay, well, my corporation, I kind of have an idea that they're from the second sphere. They're not a super old corporation, but they're small, but they're quite rich.
Yeah.
And they specialise, they kind of punch above their weight because they've got really good tech. They're illegally buying some Forge Fathers stuff. But so they're small, they're very, very elite, low model count kind of a force.
Right.
And that way you can kind of paint them up however you want to. Maybe you pick, there's some kind of special rules and you get to pick one,
Yeah, you choose your faction orders.
Options.
Your faction orders are different. Your commander special orders are different for the...
Exactly. Yep. Maybe even the list building is maybe slightly different. That actually, maybe you can't take recruits, Maybe you can take...
Absolutely, yeah.
So all that stuff, without completely changing it, but just allowing... Because the beauty of Space Marines, right? So they've got two things going on, is they've got some very distinctive paint styles, and it's really easy, as you said, Clem, to go, well, I hate painting blue, but I love painting red. Right, I'm the Blood Angels, right? I've picked. And then there's also lore and everything to go with that. But also they've been clever enough to go, well, there's loads of other chapters that we don't even know what they're doing. So
make your own.
Your models how you want to. Make your own. Exactly. So maybe... And Peter makes a really, really good point, is... To be honest, Clem, we could bash out 7 GCPS factions in a couple of hours that are okay. But where do you go from there? I think only add stuff if it's genuinely an interesting... The Maison Labs are very interesting for the game.
They're unique.
They're
very unique.
They are unique. They play unique. They feel unique on the table. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So
it adds to the universe as well. To answer also the question of, for Kings of War we say remove the number of factions. I think that's not exactly what we say. We say, maybe some of them could go, but mostly why would they go? Because we want them to refocus on Mantic's own IP and kind of strengthen the universe. And so adding some sub-faction to GCPS is in the end the same thing. It's just making a stronger backbone to whenever you play games. And so for Kings of War, there are maybe too many factions, and so if you want to make it stronger from the fluff perspective, you need to recenter, refocus some of them. For GCPS, for Firefight and GCPS, I think it's the opposite. There could be a few more factions or a bit more open-ended aspects to it, and so creating more sub-factions, I think, in the end is the same thing as removing some in Kings of War.
But as well, even if we look at the Council of Seven and go, okay, let's start coming up with names. These are super shadowy things, right? And I'm sure they don't officially exist. So, I think, the Council of Seven themselves would utterly deny there's even a Council of Seven, if that makes sense. What might be cool would be if there's, let's say, for example, you had a Firefight faction that was in the Council of Seven. Maybe they could take enforcers and they could take GCPS units.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you could do cool stuff like this.
Yeah.
And another angle to look at it for sub-factions is I don't know if you know bolt action, like if you know the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
But so basically, the army list in bolt action, you have a ton of stuff. Like for, let's say, the German book or the US book that I have, you have basically every entry for every period of the war. And so there's a lot of stuff. And then you have a ton of what they call theater selectors, like theater books. And so you can buy a campaign supplement for, but whatever, like the Battle
So
of
if you're
Stalingrad.
fighting in North Africa or Stalingrad or whatever, they'll have different kit, right?
Exactly. And so instead of having let's say the 50 kind of vehicles you can take, well, if you play in Northern Africa, you can only play the 3 that could be there. And the rules for list building your platoon, like a platoon selector, is entirely different. Because historically speaking, there weren't any... I'm talking out of my mind. There were no flamers, whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but or there were no heavy tanks.
Let's just pick an example and run with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it means if you build a list for this theater selector, you are not allowed to take any flamers, even though if it's in the list, and you are not allowed to take this kind of heavy tank, even though it's in the list, in the generic list. And so it's sort of like theme list from Kings of War, but it's more like a sub-selection of what you can get from the master list. And I think it's pretty cool. It's a very interesting way to do like a different flavor. Like you still play a US army, for example, but it's not a generic US army. It's kind of disconnected from the historical aspect of it. It's no, I know exactly... I can only build my list this way or that way to kind of fit more the story. And I think you could do the same thing in a completely like sci-fi imaginary world. Like we're not fighting GCPS like the generic NTT. We're fighting on this specific planet, on those events from the universe. And in those events, the context is this, and this. Meaning, I don't know, like there's a Strider factory on that planet. And so there tons of Striders, but there's not this kind of other stuff.
So would this be a global campaign?
Maybe
like a cookbook for Firefight and Deadzone?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, we've talked about it. Definitely the next thing I want to see developed is Mason Labs in Firefight. Like, I want to see what Mason Labs is in Firefight, and I think there's tons of potential. And I think they could do a super cool campaign around it. Yeah, maybe.
And maybe all this could go in the app, Clem.
Yeah,
this wildly ambitious app. So I love that idea because I think it really freshens things up. So it might be let's say the Forge Fathers, they can't get tanks to this particular planet.
Yeah.
Or we're fighting actually on a giant space station and you can't get tanks onto it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we have to refresh how we play and try new things and let's be honest, buy new models.
Yeah, or like it's it's an assault on a big Mason-like complex, like a big facility, and so obviously you don't have flyers, you don't have tanks, like it's a different kind of combat layout, or like industrial cities or something like this. Whatever, just come up with a story and then roll with it.
And I'd like to see. I mean, I've kind of had all kinds of crazy thoughts because the setting for Firefight and Deadzone is so incredibly broad, right? As you said, Clem, it's deliberately open, and so I think of loads of different tropes. So think about maybe there's a religious cult that rejects technology, or there's androids, or we talked about this loads, right? There's so many different possibilities. But I think it would, to introduce, maybe it's more reasonable to do these kind of things in Deadzone, but I think it would have to be like the Maison Labs, which I think is such a great idea. It would have to give something to the game that the game doesn't currently quite have. I wouldn't just create new factions for the sake of it. Having said that, I do like my own idea. I mean, I would, wouldn't I? About having that kind of a selector, for your GCPS. Almost create your own. Because I think that's a nice idea.
Yeah, I think that could work. If we talk about like adding factions to Firefight, The Nameless don't exist in Firefight yet. Definitely, that's something that could happen. The Rebels also, although we mentioned it's pretty hard maybe for the plastic sprue. But they will. Hopefully, they will keep developing this universe, and there are tons of ways they can do it. And I think back to the original question around the sub-factions for GCPS, from their perspective, I think it's just a new way to use the existing kits and maybe releasing one or two new things on top of it. And it gives another angle to get into the GCPS, and I think that's why it could be interesting for them. But yeah, hopefully we answered the question in the 4 sub-questions from it.
Yeah, and again, we absolutely love this kind of interaction, right? So thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sending that in. We really appreciate it. And and Clem, and we've run out of time. One thing we haven't mentioned yet, so we're going to have to completely skip topic of the month. We'll do it another time though, because I think it's important. Clem, we've started doing MUP Join the Fun on Facebook and Discord.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true.
So we've done this the last 2 Friday nights, and it's Discord video chat, and we've just done some hobby stuff, and we're lucky enough that some really nice people have joined us for it. So it's been really, really fun. If you're interested, please do check out the Facebook page, because it's been great. It's been really, really great. Really nice people, very friendly and relaxed, and everything we would want it to be, right, Clem?
Absolutely. I mean, I love the the social aspect of the tabletop hobby, right? Like you go and play games with people and you chat about all this stuff, and hobby hangouts like this. So basically, you just join a video chat and you work on your own projects. It's one part of it, right? Like it's just you meet up virtually, but still meet up with a group of like-minded people, and you do what you like, and you chat about whatever you're working on at the moment and whatever is going on. Like it's really a social element that I really, really enjoy about the hobby. And I think those hobby hangouts are a great occasion to do that. So yeah, just we're not super organized, let's be honest. I guess we might end up doing it every now and then on Friday evenings, Germany time. We've been squatting a Discord server from my local gaming club. Maybe we could do it in another place in the future. I don't know. Although it works there, why create an empty Discord server just for that? Or
yeah,
and super cool. And I hope to do more regularly and have people join the fun. I mean, I'm happy with the name we found for it. Isn't it great? Like MUP Join the Fun. I think that's exactly it. That's exactly what it's about. So perfect.
Yeah,
name.
exactly. Yeah, and funny enough, Clem, I've never actually done something like that before.
Yeah,
that's and
interesting.
It's so nice. I mean, we're just so lucky that we have such lovely listeners. But it's great. It's really good. Really enjoy it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, we do them sometimes with the club, like similar on Discord and everything. And I really like it. It's instead of listening to a podcast, or when you run out of podcasts to listen to, you can just join a live group and chat with people. That's also pretty cool. So join us next time.
Nice. Yes, please do, dear listener. Check out our Facebook for the details. So Clem, we are past time and we didn't even speak about the topic of the month. Have you got any shout outs or anything else you want to say before we conclude the show? Buy the big red book is what we're saying, right?
Yeah, I think I'm excited about the big red book. You guys probably should be excited too. Get your ambush lists ready. Let's organize ambush events, newbie welcome, and that's about it. What's on my mind?
Clem, one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about the lore and all the rest of it is actually, I don't know if you know, but on Facebook there is a short story writing competition type thing that they run.
For Mantic.
I forget the name of it now. Yeah, it's sort of semi-unofficial thing.
Right.
And a few months ago, just completely randomly, I spontaneously decided to write a Deadzone / Firefight short story.
Cool.
Only one other person has read it, and I did it in about 2 hours, so maybe I need to reread it. But I'm just going to put that up on the Facebook page and see.
You should.
I'm just going to get it out there. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
get it out
the Counter-Strike podcast episode that I mentioned earlier, they kind of talk about it as well. I didn't really know that Mantic was doing it, but it's pretty cool. I like that the community is kind of taking this topic in its own hands. Like for whoever likes this stuff, I think it's cool. If you want to write more fluff and cool stories about the universe, just do it. Just do it and go for it. And I like it.
Yeah. Ronnie Bard of Manticore, I think it was. Anyway, Clem, we're at time. Thank you so much again for joining me, and thank you so much for joining us, dear listeners. And if you want to write us a theme song, please feel free to. And if you want to design your own Deadzone maps, check out our Facebook page. And please send them to us. Clem?
Till next
Anything
time.
else? Till next time. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers, dear listener.